I'm sure this is a sound you've heard a lot on this channel.
Did you know? Did you know? Did you know?
Over the last few years, I have done a Did You Know Yu-Gi-Oh! Short series where I go over different Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime fun facts, and in this video, I've put together some of my most popular Did You Know shorts, and I have compiled it into one video. So if you've ever wanted to listen to a bunch of random, nerdy Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime fun facts, or have some video to fall asleep to, or game to, or do chores, or whatever you do, drive, this is the video for you. Without any further ado, here are 3 hours of Yu-Gi-Oh! Fun facts. I hope you all enjoy.
A one-turn kill in Yu-Gi-Oh! Happens when a duelist wins the duel by depleting all of their opponent's full life points at once. In a standard duel, this would mean reducing your opponent's life points from 8,000 to 0 in one turn, and in most anime duels, it would be reducing your opponent's life points from 4,000 to 0. This hasn't happened all that much in Yu-Gi-Oh! And the first time that it happened is the duel between Joey Wheeler and Mai Valentine. Mai, of course, had 2,000 life points at the start of this duel, and Joey was not able to inflict damage to her until turn 9. Thanks to the non-existent rules of Duelist Kingdom, Time Wizard turned Baby Dragon into Thousand Dragon and aged up Mai's Harpies ladies, reducing their attack value. Thousand Dragon was able to attack and destroy all 3 Harpy ladies at once, and Joey reduced Mai's full life points down to 0, giving him credit for having the first one-turn kill in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! Did you know there is a Yu-Gi-Oh! Card that was actually just revealed that is based off of the famous trolley car problem? So for those of you that don't know, the trolley problem is a series of thought experiments which is stylized in an ethical dilemma. The problem usually states that the trolley is on track to kill 5 people. You can pull the lever to make it change tracks, but then it will kill one bystander that was not supposed to be hit if you didn't intervene. It's a really fascinating thought experiment that has gotten memed to all hell, but a few days ago, Yu-Gi-Oh! Actually revealed this card. It's a trap card called Switch Point, and its effect reads, if your opponent controls 3 or more monsters, choose one of them, and make your opponent send either that monster or all other monsters they control to the graveyard. The card art is obviously a reference to the trolley problem, and this is one of the coolest real-life based cards that they have made in a very long time. Did you know there is only one Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel where the person that used Seal of Orichalcos actually got the win? I mean, think about that. There have been so many duels where the Seal of Orichalcos was used, and only one time did the player who activated it actually win. Do you know what time it was? Well, it was actually when Mai took on Joey, which was, I believe, their second duel in that season. Mai activated the Seal of Orichalcos, and she ended up defeating Joey because he basically couldn't continue. So it's kind of funny that the only time a player technically won using this card was because their opponent physically could not continue the duel. It's almost like the Seal of Orichalcos was a cursed card for whatever duelist that used it. Pretty ironic. Did you know there is only one legacy character in Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5 that never dueled Yuya or Zark? And when I say legacy character, I mean major legacy character. The 2 from 5D's Jack and Crow, the 2 from GX, Alexis and Aster, and the 1 from Zexal in Kite. Well, starting with 5D's, Jack dueled Yuya multiple times, even defeating Yuya once, and both Jack and Crow took on Zark. Going to Zexal, Kaito teamed up with Shun in order to take on Zark, and Edo had the privilege of dueling both Yuya and Zark, but the only legacy character that never dueled either was Alexis Rhodes. It was great seeing Alexis in Arc 5, and at least she got a win, which is more than what her GX compadre Edo could say, but still, it would have been nice if she was part of that massive gauntlet duel against Zark. Did you know there was only one main duelist that Jaden Yuki, the main character from Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, could just never seem to beat? Jaden has the record for the most on-screen one-on-one victories in all of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Franchise. In fact, it's a record that probably will never be broken. However, he was never able to defeat Zane Truesdale in a duel. And it's not like he didn't have opportunities. These two dueled 3 times total times. The first time Zane beat him, the second time at the end of Season 1 ended up being a draw, and then the third time in Season 3 was a no result, although Zane had that win in hand, but due to his health, the duel had to end. I do love that Judai did have a kryptonite, and maybe if Season 4 was a little longer, we would have seen Judai actually defeat Zane, but this is the only main character that he was never able to defeat. Did you know that fusions were not originally supposed to be the focus in the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX anime? In a recent interview with Hikokubo Masahiro, it was revealed that GX having fusion summons was not a Konami demand, it was all him and the staff. Hikokubo felt that polymerization and fusion summoning were rarely used during Duel Monsters era, and he felt it was a very underutilized but incredibly interesting mechanic that was unique to Yu-Gi-Oh! When he proposed the idea that GX should be fusion-focused to Kazuki Takahashi, the creator of Yu-Gi-Oh!, Takahashi loved the idea and was extremely enthused by it. It's crazy to think what Yu-Gi-Oh! GX would have been focused on if it had not been for Hikokubo, and if it was not for him, we might not have gotten Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime shows focused on a particular summoning mechanic. Let me know your thoughts on this down below in the comment section. Did you know there is only one protagonist who has never defeated a season-ending villain, and that protagonist is Yugioh from Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5. Think about it. At the end of the first season, Yugioh dueled Akiba Reiji. While Akiba Reiji was certainly not a villain, Yugioh didn't even defeat him in the duel, losing right before they ended up going to the Synchro Arc. And then in the Synchro Arc, Akiba Reiji defeated Jean-Michel Raget at the end of Season 2. Yugioh was not the one that took down Raget. Instead, he defeated Jack in the prior duel. And of course, Jack was not a villain either. And then in the final arc, Zark was the main villain of the show, and of course Yugioh was a part of Zark, so he was not involved in the duel that took down Zark. And I wish Yugioh was able to have his moment that every other protagonist had and took down a really big bad. Unfortunately, it never happened. Did you know that Maximilian Pegasus actually died in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga right after his duel with Yugi? After Pegasus loses his match to Yugi, Yami Bakura preys on him and they have a matchup of their Millennium items in which Yami Bakura wins. So in the anime, we see Pegasus being stretchered out of his room downstairs and off to assumingly a hospital where his life is saved, because we see him appear later on in Season 4 of Duel Monsters and then eventually in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. However, in the manga, Pegasus is not so lucky. Pegasus is actually murdered here by Yami Bakura after losing his Millennium item matchup. I guess the anime team felt that keeping Pegasus alive was a better move so that they could maybe use his character in future seasons, which they did. Let me know if you knew about this manga versus anime difference, and if you liked the decision to keep him alive, down below in the comments. Did you know that Pegasus, the creator of Yu-Gi-Oh!, the first antagonist in Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, is actually confirmed to be dead by the time Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds comes around? Let me explain. There is a racing tournament called the World Racing Grand Prix, and in episode 98 we get to see the sponsors of this tournament on a poster. On this poster there are a lot of awesome references to older characters. However, the most important one here is the very top sponsor company, which is the Pegasus J. Crawford Memorial Foundation. Now, you don't have a memorial foundation for someone unless they are passed away, so this heavily implies, pretty much confirms, that Pegasus is no longer alive when Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds airs. We have no idea how he passed away, and we probably will never know, but it's definitely a sombering fun fact, and one that can very easily be missed. Let me know if you knew this Easter egg down below. Did you know there is only one Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonist out of all 8 protags that has never fusion summoned? Obviously, we know that Yugi and Judai fusion summoned on multiple occasions, as well as the Rush Duel protagonists Yugioh and Yugioh, and so we have 4 pro tags remaining. Well, Playmaker has fusion summoned Cyberse Clock Dragon. He's actually used all the mechanics except pendulums. Speaking of pendulums, Yuya Sakaki used all the mechanics, including fusion summoning, that were available up to the release of Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5. So between Yusei and Yuma, the answer is Yuma. Yusei fusion summoned one single time against Team Unicorn when he summoned Dragon Knight Draco Equist, meaning Yuma is the only Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonist that has never fusion summoned. Pretty crazy. Shout out to Blazmasters for pointing this out to me. Did you know we have seen 2 different duelists achieve the 100,000 or more life point value? Well, if you didn't watch Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal, you probably wouldn't even believe this is real, because achieving that many life points is just absurd, but it happened twice, and in both instances in Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal. Charlie McCoy dueled Yuma early on in Zexal, and he got his life points to 100,000, which was a brand new record for the most life points that we have ever seen. Don Thousand then decided to break that record by getting his life points to 102,900. And the funniest part about both of these instances, both duelists lost. Even though they both got their life points to 100,000 or more, they still lost the duel. Unbelievable. Let me know if you ever think this record will be broken down below in the comments. Did you know that there is a Yu-Gi-Oh! Card that supposedly shows the hand of Yusei and Yuya exchanging cards? That card would be none other than Cards of Consonance, which is a spell card. The top hand is definitely supposed to resemble Yusei's, while a lot of people feel the bottom hand is supposed to resemble Yuya's, and after all, it looks exactly like Yuya's arm does. The really weird thing about this card is that this was released in 2010. Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5 did not air until 2014, and the design for Yuya probably was not created until 2013 at the earliest. And so does this card somehow strangely predict what a future Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonist would look like, or is it just one of the weirdest coincidences we have ever seen when it comes to a Yu-Gi-Oh! Card? I think it's just a coincidence, and one of my favorite fun facts when it comes to Yu-Gi-Oh! Characters appearing in card art. In the Yu-Gi-Oh! English dub, sometimes they replace the original card images with their own cards, and this can lead to some really weird decisions, like Arcana having the Winged Dragon of Ra. Well, one of the craziest instances of this is actually in Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal episode 112. Flip talks about how he has all these rare cards that can cheer Yuma up. And in the original version, these cards are just faceless, they're blank cards. But in the English dub, if you slow it down, and I mean really slow it down, you can actually see that Flip has the 5 pieces of Exodia and Dark Magician, Yugimoto's ace. And this moment in the dub becomes even funnier because all of the characters just simply ignore Flip, even though in the dub he's got 6 of the most rare cards in existence. Huge thank you to David Heinrich for pointing this one out. And if any of you guys have any other instances of this, please let me know down below in the comments. Did you know there is only one Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime that never had a girl versus girl duel? Now, girl versus girl duels are not necessarily common. There's only been 28 in the entirety of the franchise, and only 10 of those happened in Gallop shows, meaning 18 of those 28 have happened in the Rush Yu-Gi-Ohs, which really does show how far we've come when it comes to quantity and quality for girl characters overall in Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters had Anzu versus Mai, 5Ds had Aki versus Misty, Zexal had Rio versus Aika, Arc 5 had Yuzu versus Masumi, and Vrains had Aoi versus Vira, meaning Yu-Gi-Oh! GX is the only anime that did not have 2 girl characters duel against each other, which really isn't surprising because Yu-Gi-Oh! GX had only like, what, 2 relevant girl characters? So yeah, the answer to this trivia question makes a lot of sense. Did you know there was only one main character from Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains that never synchro summoned? So after Season 1, all of the other extra deck methods outside of Links were brought into Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains. We then got to watch all of our characters utilize all these extra deck methods. XZs, Synchros, Fusions, you name it. However, there was one character that used almost all of the extra deck methods except Synchro monsters. Can you guess who it is? It was not Playmaker, it wasn't Revolver, and it wasn't I. The answer is actually Soulburner. That's right, Soulburner is the only main Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains character that did not use Synchro Summons, and it's pretty interesting because he used all the other methods, Fusions and XZs. It would have been really cool to see a Salmon Great Synchro monster, and it's something that I wish we got during the second half of Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains. Most Yu-Gi-Oh! Characters only use one deck, but did you know there is a Yu-Gi-Oh! Character that used almost 8 different decks in their series? It's the most decks used by a single character, and if you guessed Chaz from Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, you would be correct. He starts playing a Chthonian deck. That quickly turns into a VWXYZ deck. He also uses the North Academy deck, an Armed Dragon deck, a Zero Attack deck that his brothers gave him, an Ojama deck. He uses a White Knight deck when he's under the control of Sayu, and then he finally uses an Ojama Armed Dragon combo deck, which takes elements of his Ojama cards and Armed Dragon cards. I actually like the idea of a Yu-Gi-Oh! Character using different decks. It's something that we didn't really see all the time in Yu-Gi-Oh! Let me know which one you prefer. Characters using different decks or characters building upon one deck over the course of the show. Did you know there have only been 2 Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonists who have summoned a ritual monster? I know ritual summoning is kind of memed on and it's the forgotten method, even though I personally really do enjoy ritual summoning and I wish we saw more of it. It's crazy to me that only 2 of our main characters have ever utilized them. Obviously, one of them is Yugimoto, who ritual summoned a few different times throughout the Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters anime, and the only other protagonist to ritual summon is Playmaker, who ritual summoned Cyberse Magician at the start of Season 2. It's crazy to me that Yuya never ritual summoned, considering he really did utilize all of the summoning mechanics very well, but even in Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5, it felt like rituals took a backseat. Ritual Dimension, anyone? And so Playmaker and Yugi are the only 2 protags that have ever ritual summoned. Did you know that Yu-Gi-Oh! GX actually held a record for over 8 years? In the graduation duel between Judai and Hellkaiser, Hellkaiser's Cyber End Dragon achieved 36,900 attack points, which is absurd. This would be the most amount of attack points any anime monster would have ever reached until being broken 8 years later by Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal's Vector and Yuma. What's crazy about this is both duelists actually broke Zane's record at the same time in the same duel. Utopia Ray V and number 104 Masquerade reached 83,200 attack and 41,700 attack, respectively. That record would then be shattered by Yuma and Don Thousand's duel a little later on in the show. But this was a record that stood for 8 years, and what do you guys think? Will this record ever be broken? Let me know down below in the comments. Did you know that Yugimoto's mother actually appeared in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters anime? Yugi's mom actually had a speaking role only in the subbed version of Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters in episode 50. Take a look. While Yugi's mom did make a couple of appearances in the manga, most appearances were completely cut from the anime in general, and if you only watched the dubbed version of Yu-Gi-Oh!, Yugi's mom, and particularly this scene, was not present at all. I have no idea why the dub completely removed her from the show, and I have no idea why she was such a minor character in the anime, considering she is the mother of Yugi, but I guess when you got a Tem inside you, it doesn't really matter what your parents have to say. Really fun fact and bizarre censorship that not a lot of people are aware of. Did you know that what happened to Anzu in the duel between Joey and Yugi during Battle City was much different in the manga? In the anime, Anzu is strapped to a chair with a huge metal container hanging above her, and Marek says if the duel does not happen between Yugi and Joey, he will drop the container on her, assumingly killing her instantly. Well, in the manga, none of this played out, and instead, Yami Marek had Anzu holding a cyanide pill between her teeth, threatening to force her under his mind control to swallow the pill, which would kill her instantly if Yugi did not duel Joey. Now, I'm not sure why the anime changed this. Maybe they felt that overdosing on a pill was a little too real, and having a metal container drop on someone is a little more cartoony, but this is one of those rare manga-censored moments, even in the original subbed version of Yu-Gi-Oh! Let me know if you knew about this down below in the comments. Did you know there have only been 2 Yu-Gi-Oh! Rivals that have never lost to the protagonists? Starting with Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, Zain, Ryo Marufuji never lost to Judai. I think they dueled a total of 3 times, and Ryo Marufuji beat him once. They drew in the second duel, and then there was a no result in the third duel. And the other rival is Kaito from Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal, who never lost to Yuma. They only dueled twice, but the first duel was a no result, even though Kaito was completely dominating him in that duel. And the second duel, which was the rematch, was a really surprising Kaito win. And so Kaito and Zain are the only Yu-Gi-Oh! Rivals that have never lost to their respective protagonists. Pretty cool. Did you know there was a protagonist ace monster that appeared in 43 different duels and a protagonist's ace monster that only appeared in 5? Have you ever wondered how many times each Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonist has summoned their main ace monster? Well, if you haven't, you're probably normal, but if you have, you're like me and you're a little weird. Firewall Dragon, Playmaker's ace or secondary ace to Decode Talker, was only used in 5 different duels, which is crazy low. Now, most of these aces were used about mid-20s in terms of times, and then you have Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon, which was used 38 different times, and if you think that's a lot, just wait till you hear Utopia Yuma's ace, which was summoned in a grand total of 43 different duels. I have a video on my channel that goes into more depth on this. I'll link it down below. Crazy the disparity between some of these monsters, mainly Utopia and Firewall Dragon. This card should be impossible to summon. Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon has just been revealed for Rush duels, but how is this possible? Blue Eyes White Dragon is a legend card in Rush, meaning you can only have 1 copy of it in your deck, and Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon needs 3 Blue Eyes White Dragons in order to be fusion summoned. Well, we got 2 new Blue Eyes monsters that make this seemingly impossible fusion monster possible in Rush duels. Blue Eyes Vision Dragon's effect is when it's on the field, the card's name is Blue Eyes White Dragon, and if you fusion summon Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, this face-up card can be used as 2 materials, meaning if you have this card and the Blue Eyes White Dragon on the field, you can fusion summon into Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. Blue Eyes Bright Dragon also helps because this card's name is treated as Blue Eyes White Dragon, so we never knew if we were going to get Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon in Rush, but thanks to this new support, Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon can be used in Rush duels, and the card artwork is insane. Did you know there is only 1 card in Yu-Gi-Oh! History that has appeared in every single Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, Duel Monsters all the way through Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush? It has not necessarily been used in every anime, but it has appeared in every single show, and that card is the trap card Mirror Force, one of the most iconic trap cards in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! This card was obviously used very often in Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters. It was used in GX, 5Ds, Zexal, and of course by Revolver in Vrains. It was also used in Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s by Yuga, and did show up in Go Rush. In Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5, it's in the actual very first episode on a Leo Institute of Dueling advertisement, which barely qualifies it as the only card that has appeared in every single show, and it just shows you how much of an iconic trap card Mirror Force truly is. Hikokubo Masahiro is the duel composer who has written the duels for Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters all the way through Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush, and in a recent interview with Natalie, a Japanese online entertainment news site, he said that Soulburner's character in particular was very difficult to write for because of how good the Salomon Great deck is, and so he found it hard to put Soulburner in losing positions. Now, Soulburner only lost one duel in the entirety of Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains, and maybe that was a reason why. He found Extra Link incredibly troublesome to make, and he only went out of his way to do it when Shin Yoshida specifically told him that he had to make an Extra Link for those particular duels. We have often theorized that the complexity of the Master Duel game and how it applies to the anime maybe led Yu-Gi-Oh! And Konami as a whole to go to Rush Duels and basically have a soft reboot for the franchise, and maybe this is further proof that that is true. But let me know your thoughts on this down below in the comment section. Did you know there is only one character in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! History who has dueled at least 3 times and has won every single duel they've been in? No losses, no draws, no results. And the answer to this may be very shocking, and that's because that duelist is none other than the powerhouse Taya Gardner from the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters. She defeated Joey. Of course, that was before Joey knew how to duel. She defeated Mai. Of course, that's because Mai surrendered and gave her the win. And she defeated Crump of the Big Five, and that's because, well, it's Crump. So there are a lot of caveats regarding the wins that she's had, but it's crazy that with all of these strong duelists we've seen in Yu-Gi-Oh!, she is the only one to duel at least 3 times and win every single duel. This is one of my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh! Fun facts, and it really is crazy. Most of us are aware that the Egyptian gods made on-screen appearances in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX because a version of the Winged Dragon of Ra was actually summoned in that show. But did you know there is another Yu-Gi-Oh! Spin-off where the Egyptian gods actually made a brief appearance? That show is Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. In episode 121 during the Team Taio Team 5Ds duel, Team Taio summoned Zushin the Sleeping Giant, and in the build-up to that card being summoned, Taro actually compared Zushin's strength to the strength of Ra, Obelisk, and Slifer, and the 3 Egyptian gods were actually shown on screen. Now, this episode was one of the many that was actually never dubbed into English, so if you only watched the dub of 5Ds, you probably weren't even aware that the gods made an appearance in 5Ds. It's a really cool moment, and I would have loved to see the Egyptian gods utilized in some of the other spin-off shows. Did you know that in the final episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains, Playmaker makes a very touching tribute to the Ignis? Playmaker summons one of the more famous Link monsters, Access Code Talker. When Playmaker uses Access Code's effect, he actually banishes Link monsters in the attribute order in which the Ignis died. He banished in this order: Earth, Water, Fire, Wind, Light, and finally, Dark, which just so happens to be the same order that all the Ignis died in: Earth, Aqua, Flame, Windy, Lightning, and then finally, I. It is a really awesome low-key tribute to the Ignis, and it's something that for years I didn't even realize. This was pointed out to me by an awesome user in my community, Colin C., so shout out to Colin. Let me know if you knew this, and let me know your thoughts on this down below in the comments. Did you know there is a character that has appeared in every single Studio Gallop Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime? Kind of. Do you remember this guy? His name is Yugioh Tetsu Trudge. He had a very big role in Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, a small role in Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 0, and a small role in Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters. Well, he has in some way, shape, or form been referenced in every Studio Gallop Yu-Gi-Oh! Don't believe me? He appeared in Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters and 5Ds. In Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, he was mentioned by name. In Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal, he appears as an Astral World-looking character. In Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5, he appears as one of the silhouettes of a legendary duelist. And in Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains, he's one of the characters that Soulburner beats the crap out of in his flashback. Unfortunately, Yugioh did not quote-unquote appear in Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s, thus ending the streak and the meme that was clearly kept alive by Studio Gallop. Let me know what you guys think about this Easter egg down below in the comments. Did you know that Hell Kaiser, Zane Truesdale, was actually mentioned by name in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5 anime? In Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5 episode 116, we see a Duel Academy classroom, and in the background of that classroom, we see a chalkboard. The translated text on that chalkboard refers to Ryo Marufuji by name, referring to him as a legendary duelist who hailed from the fusion dimension and was most famous for playing a card which allowed the summoning of Chimera Tech Fortress Dragon, Chimera Tech Rampage Dragon, and Gatling Dragon. Now, many people have speculated over the years that maybe Hell Kaiser was supposed to make an appearance in Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5, and even though there is no proof of this, it is really fascinating that they would make a reference to such a legendary character and then just never touch on it or expand on it at any point in the show. I have theorized before that Zane may have been dead, but what do you guys think? Let me know down below in the comments. Did you know there is a Rush Duel card that is going to be released that at the moment cannot actually be summoned? Over the past weekend, 5-headed dragon was confirmed to be heading towards Rush Duels, and the requirements to summon this monster is to fuse 5 dragon type monsters together. Well, if you're not familiar with Rush Duels, to fusion summon, you need to use material that already exists on your side of the field, and since there are only 3 zones, this card is literally impossible to summon at the moment. I'm sure we will get some sort of effect or maybe a new way to fusion summon in Rush Duel that will allow this card to be usable, but it is pretty funny that at the moment, a card that was just revealed to be coming to the game of Rush is not actually playable whatsoever. Let me know your thoughts on 5 God Dragon coming to Rush Duel, and let me know any predictions you have that will fix this issue down below in the comments. Did you know that Blair Flanagan, the girl from Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, actually made an appearance in Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds? So in the very first episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, we see Jack Atlas dueling and beating a character known as Hunter Pace, and after he wins, we see these cheerleaders cheering for Jack Atlas, the king, if you will, and one of those cheerleaders looks identical to Blair in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. Now, this is one of the weirder occurrences, I would say, of a character showing up in another series, and moreover, we know that Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds and GX are on the same timeline because of the Bonds Beyond Time movie, so this very well could legitimately be Blair. Maybe she aged incredibly well, but it's definitely a strange cameo, and it's the only time that Blair ever made an appearance outside of GX. Let me know if you knew about this cool cameo down below in the comments. Did you know that the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime with the most amount of missing English dubbed episodes is not actually Yu-Gi-Oh! GX? It is a well-known fact at this point that the entire final season of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX was never dubbed in English, but GX does not have the most amount of missing dubbed episodes. That title actually belongs to Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. The final season of GX is 24 episodes, and when you include the final episode of Season 3, that's 25 episodes of GX that were never dubbed into English. However, the entire final 20-episode season of 5Ds was not dubbed, including an 11-episode span in the middle of Season 4, meaning that by 6 episodes, Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds actually has more undubbed episodes than GX, beating it out 31 to 25. Do you think we will ever see Konami complete the English dub of either of these shows? Let me know your thoughts on that, and if it's something you'd be interested in seeing, down below in the comments. Did you know that Playmaker, one of the best duelists we have ever seen in a Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, actually lost a duel? So no, this did not happen during the Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains anime, where he went completely undefeated, drawing a few times, but obviously never losing. Well, in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links mobile app, which is very heavily implied to be canon to the events of Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains, we play as Soulburner to start the campaign, and as the story progresses, we run into Playmaker in Link Vrains Duel Links, and we challenge him to a duel to get more information. Well, while you're controlling Soulburner, you have to defeat Playmaker in order to continue the story, giving Playmaker his only on-screen, if you will, loss of the entire series. Let me know if you think this loss should count. I definitely do, because this is a continuation of the Vrain story, down below in the comments. Did you know only 2 Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonists have never used a normal monster? Obviously, we can quickly eliminate Yugi, Judai, Yuga, and Udius. Early on in Yu-Gi-Oh! Normal monsters were a little more common, and in Rush Yu-Gi-Oh! Normal monsters are a lot more common than the current main game. Looking back at the Gallop protagonists, Yusei did use a couple of normal monsters, leaving just Yusaku, Yuya, and Yuma. Well, Yusaku actually used normal monsters like Bitron and Digitron in order to quickly link summon from time to time, meaning Yuma and Yuya are the only 2 main characters to never summon a normal monster, which to me is honestly just crazy considering how many duels these characters had. But normal monsters aren't all that useful, so I guess it's not the most surprising thing in the world. A one-turn kill in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is when you reduce your opponent's life points from full to 0 in 1 turn. And the first one-turn kill that took place in the Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D's anime was actually performed by the Master of Faster, Jack Atlas. In Episode 8, Jack duels Hunter Pace, and on Jack's second turn, the third turn of the duel, Jack summons his Red Dragon Archfiend, Ace Monster. Thanks to the effect of the Lineage of Destruction trap card, Red Dragon Archfiend is able to attack a total of 4 times this turn, and on the 4th RDA attack, Hunter's life points go from 600 to 0, and Jack performs the first one-turn kill in Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. Did you know there is only 1 spell card that has been played over 200 times throughout the many Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime? Now, your first guess might be Pot of Greed, but Pot of Greed was only played just over 100 times, and the spell card that we are looking for here is Polymerization. Polymerization was featured in 6 of the 8 shows and was used 39 times in Duel Monsters, 55 times in Arc 5, and 114 times in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. Fusion summoning is one of those mechanics that has been around since the start of the game, so this is not really too surprising to see, but it's unreal how many times Polymerization has been used. Truly an iconic spell card. Let me know what your favorite Polymerization-like card is down below in the comments, and a huge thank you to Solid Snack for compiling this data. Did you know that the 3rd Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters opening shows off a duel that never actually ends up happening? In Opening 3 Wild Drive, we see a lot of pretty cool shots, but the one that is most talked about happens at the very end, where we see 2 duelists dueling on the Kaiba Corp blimp. The 2 duelists in this shot are Yami Yugi and Marek, which is a duel that never happens on a multitude of levels. Number 1, the Pharaoh never duels regular Marek, he only duels Marek in his Yami form, and number 2, the 2 of these don't duel on the blimp, but rather on the top of the Kaiba Core towers. Now, the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime was following the manga storyline, unlike all of the spin-offs, so this isn't a case of the writers maybe having a change of plans at the last minute. It's rather a case of the writers probably trying to show off the rivalry, but it is another instance of a Yu-Gi-Oh! Opening showing off a duel that never actually happens. We established that the most used spell card in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime is Polymerization, but do you know what the most used trap card is? Now, you might have guessed Negate Attack, and you would have been close. Negate Attack was used a total of 18 times. Maybe Yusei's ace trap card Scrap Iron Scarecrow came to mind, and I believe that's the second most used trap card, as it's been used 19 times, but the trap that had the most amount of plays, and the only card that appeared in every single Yu-Gi-Oh! Show, was Mirror Force, which was used a total of 24 times. And while it appeared in every anime, it was only actually used in Duel Monsters, GX, 5Ds, Zexal, Vrains, and Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s. So the most played spell card is Polymerization, and the most played trap card is Mirror Force. Huge shout out to Solid Snack for compiling the data. Did you know that there is an apparent fusion monster that was almost summoned in a Season 4 duel in the original Yu-Gi-Oh! However, it wasn't summoned, and to this day, we have no idea if this monster even exists. That would be when Yami Yugi took on Weevil Underwood. At one point later in the duel, Yami Yugi draws the Eye of Timaeus, and he attempts to fuse the Eye of Timaeus with a card called Poison Butterfly. However, Timaeus feels betrayed that Yami Yugi gave into the Seal of Orichalcos in his last duel, and so Timaeus refuses to do anything for Yami Yugi and essentially sacrifices himself in this duel, so we never see what the fusion monster would have been between Eye of Timaeus and Poison Butterfly. Would you like to see Konami release a card that has these two materials as a requirement? And finally answer the 20-year mystery of what this fusion monster would have looked like? Let me know down below in the comments. In the upcoming Jack Atlas structure deck, there have already been a lot of really cool card reveals, but in my opinion, none are cooler than Vision Resonator. Now, while this card looks like any other Resonator monster that Jack Atlas would use, this card has a much deeper meaning because when you look a little deeper, you realize that this card is a tribute to the Jack and Carly relationship. The symbol on the chest plate of this monster resembles the symbols that you would see on Fortune Lady monsters, and even the term vision could imply fortune ladies and fortune tellers which are trying to see visions of the future. While the dynamic between Carly and Jack sadly fizzled out as soon as the Dark Signers arc was over, this card is a perfect tribute to the two of them, and I absolutely love it. Let me know your thoughts on this down below in the comments. Did you know there was a Chaos Xyz number that we were robbed of in Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal? In episode 104, Alito used the effect of Battle and Boxer Cheat Commissioner to activate Rank Up Magic Barion's Force from Nistro's hand, which would have upgraded number 54 Lionheart into a Chaos number via a Chaos Xyz evolution. However, Yuma had to play Party Pooper and activated Overlay Marker, which negated the effect of Cheat Commissioner and prevented number C54 from being created. This is a card that we almost got, but to this day, we have no idea what Chaos number 54 would have looked like or would have done, and unfortunately, we probably never will. I did see this on Google, but I feel like Blazing Lionheart would be an awesome name. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Did you know there is a Yu-Gi-Oh! Character who took over 200 episodes before they got a win? That character was in the Rush shows, debuting in episode 1 of Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s, and getting their first win in episode 147 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush. And that character, of course, is the main villain of both 7s and Go Rush, and that is Otis. And it's not like Otis didn't have plenty of chances to get his first win. He lost 8 times in 7s and then lost his first duel in Go Rush to Udius. He eventually beat 1010 and Ron in a tag team duel, and then the very next episode would beat Yugioh and Manabu in a very impressive win. So Otis ended up getting 2 wins, but it took him 239 episodes to get his first win after his first loss in the first episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s. Absolutely unreal. Did you know there has only been one girl character who has dueled in a season-ending duel, and it actually just happened at the end of Season 2 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush, and that character is Yuumu. The Season 2 finale duel started with Yuga versus Yuhi. However, in the middle of this duel, Udius took over for Yuhi, and Yuumu took over for Yuga, switching sides from Udius' side to Yuga's side. It was a really cool twist. Now, Yuumu was not successful in this duel as Udius did pick up the win, but Yuumu is the first girl character involved in a season finale duel in the history of Yu-Gi-Oh!, which is awesome. She's also only 2 wins away from becoming the most winningest girl character in all of Yu-Gi-Oh!, surpassing Roman's record from 7s, so with a whole season of Go Rush left, I'm sure she's going to break that record as well. Really, really cool stuff. Did you know that Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush just had a Red Eyes Black Dragon reference in its most recent episode? In episode 17, Yuumu summons a monster known as Red Boot Boost Dragon, which has 2,400 attack points and looks and sounds very much like Joey Wheeler's famous Red Eyes Black Dragon. And the fact that her previous ace was Bluetooth Burst Dragon, a clear reference to Seto Kaiba's Blue Eyes White Dragon, I think it's safe to say that this is meant to be a reference to Red Eyes Black Dragon. The attack name is very similar to its English attack name, Inferno Fire Blast, in which Yuumu yells Inferno Giga Flare. I'm sure Joey and Kaiba are very, very proud. The possibilities are endless. Let me know what other iconic anime dragons you think we are going to see referenced in Yuumu's deck throughout Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush down below in the comments. Did you know that the final ending of Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5, Ending 6, actually misled the viewer? So in this ending, we see a bunch of different shots of the U-Boys and the Bracelet Girls all having seemingly their own individual bodies back. This led many people to speculate that by the time Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5 ends, the Bracelet Girls and the U-Boys will all have their bodies back. However, when the show ended, Yuzu was revived, but Serena, Rin, and Ruri remained inside of Yuzu, and the other three U-Boys remained inside of Yuya. This has led a few people to believe that the original plans for Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5 when this ending first aired was for all 8 of these characters to get their bodies back, but plans may have changed at some point in that final arc. What do you guys think about this? Would you have rather seen the U-Boys and the Bracelet Girls all come back to life, or are you okay with how their stories all ended? Let me know down below in the comments. Did you know that Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5 foreshadowed the final battle between Zark and Ray as early as episode 2? In episode 2, we see Yuya and Yuzu take each other on in a duel where Yuzu plays the bad guy and Yuya plays the good guy. However, using the very commonly known left and right rule, where the character on the left side of the screen is the bad guy and the character on the right-hand side of the screen is the quote-unquote good guy, we see that the roles are inversed. Yuzu is on the right-hand side of the screen, which ultimately symbolizes her being Ray, the character that is able to defeat Zark, who Yuya represents, and that's why he is on the left side of the screen. Furthermore, Yuzu actually ends up defeating Yuya in the duel, which does foreshadow how the duel between Zark and Ray goes. The foreshadowing is great. The execution, maybe a little bit of a different story, but let me know what you guys think about this and Arc 5 down below in the comments. Did you know there have only been 2 Yu-Gi-Oh! Animes that have had unique insert songs written for them? So a unique insert song is a song that plays during a scene in an episode that is not an opening or an ending of that anime. This first happened in Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, which had a crazy amount of unique insert songs, including Clear Mind, You Say, and Yakusoku no Melody. Well, this didn't happen again in a Yu-Gi-Oh! Show until Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s, which had 2 insert songs, one sung by Roa's voice actor and one sung by Roman's voice actor. Honestly, every single Yu-Gi-Oh! Insert song that we have gotten that is not an opening or ending has been insanely good, and I wish this happened more often in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Franchise. Let me know which one of these 5 is your favorite down below in the comments. Do you remember Yusei Fudo's fear of bugs in Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds? Well, if you remember Yusei having a fear of bugs, you're actually only referring to the dubbed version of Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. This is, of course, referring to the second episode of the Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds anime. In the English dub, a big focal point of the duel that Yusei has against Lenny is that he has a fear of bugs. The dubbed episode title is even called Creepy Crawlies, which is a reference to the fear of bugs right then and there. However, in the original version of this episode, there is not a single mention of Yusei being afraid of bugs, meaning if you have this memory of him being afraid of bugs, it's really a dub-only memory and was not present at all in the original. Now, if you never watched the original, you wouldn't have known this, but let me know if you knew Yusei being afraid of bugs was just a pure dub plot point and not actually present in the original down below in the comments. Did you know we have only seen multiple Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonists fuse their monsters together in order to create a newer monster on 2 occasions. The most recent one just happened in episode 39, where the protagonist of Sevens and Go Rush fused together Sevens Road Magician and Transamu Reinek in order to summon Transamu Road Reinek. Well, this occurrence also happened once before in the Bonds Beyond Time movie, and that was actually between Judai and Yusei. During the duel against Paradox, Judai uses polymerization to fusion summon Elemental Hero Neos and Junk Gardna in order to summon Elemental Hero Neos Knight. These are the only 2 occurrences in the entire history of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime that we have seen 2 protagonists combine their monsters and summon an even greater one. Let me know some other dream fusion combinations you wish we saw down below in the comments. Did you know that there is a 10-foot tall woman in Yu-Gi-Oh? Now, some of you have just been introduced to this character through Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links, and I saw that many people had a very normal reaction to finding out that Mitsuko is a 10-foot woman that exists in the world of Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush. A couple of fun facts about this character, since she was one of the most talked about things in the Duel Links subreddit. Her English dub name is Terza Flatwoods. Terza, of course, is the Italian word for 3, and this character is described to be 3 meters tall, which of course is about 10 feet tall. And she is actually based off of an American cryptid, the Flatwoods monster in Virginia. They even have a chair set up and everything, which is why in her debut episode, she's acting as a chair. It's actually a really, really cool reference. Shout out to West Virginia, and yeah, shout out to tall women. Awesome, man. Did you know that the final ending of Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5, Ending 6, actually misled the viewer? So in this ending, we see a bunch of different shots of the U-Boys and the Bracelet Girls all having seemingly their own individual bodies back. This led many people to speculate that by the time Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5 ends, the Bracelet Girls and the U-Boys will all have their bodies back. However, when the show ended, Yuzu was revived, but Serena, Rin, and Rory remained inside of Yuzu, and the other 3 U-Boys remained inside of Yuya. This has led a few people to believe that the original plans for Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5 when this ending first aired was for all 8 of these characters to get their bodies back, but plans may have changed at some point in that final arc. What do you guys think about this? Would you have rather seen the U-Boys and the Bracelet Girls all come back to life, or are you okay with how their stories all ended? Let me know down below in the comments. Did you know there are only 2 level 1 ritual monsters in the history of the entire Yu-Gi-Oh! Card pool? The first one is Relinquished, which is a monster that many of us associate with Maximilian Pegasus, and if you watched the first Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, you probably remember this monster for its sucking abilities. Yeah, and then we have a new monster that was just introduced, and that was Cyber Sage. This monster isn't even out yet, but it is coming out in the upcoming set Cyberstorm Access. So for 20 years, Relinquished was the only level 1 ritual monster in the entire game, and now we are getting a new one. Cyber Sage joins Relinquished at a very exclusive table, and who knows, maybe it'll be another 20 years before we get our 3rd level 1 ritual monster. Let me know your thoughts on this and any other weird categories that have a very small amount of Yu-Gi-Oh! Monsters down below in the comments. Did you know there is only one spell card that has been played over 200 times throughout the many Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime? Now, your first guess might be Pot of Greed, but Pot of Greed was only played just over 100 times, and the spell card that we are looking for here is Polymerization. Polymerization was featured in 6 of the 8 shows and was used 39 times in Duel Monsters, 55 times in Arc 5, and 114 times in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. Fusion summoning is one of those mechanics that has been around since the start of the game, so this is not really too surprising to see, but it's unreal how many times Polymerization has been used. Truly an iconic spell card. Let me know what your favorite Polymerization-like card is down below in the comments, and a huge thank you to Solid Snack for compiling this data. Did you know that one of the duels between Yugimoto and Joey Wheeler was actually an anime-only duel and never took place in the original manga? That would be their duel in Duelist Kingdom, right before Yugi faces Pegasus, and right after Joey beats Bandit Keith and Yugi beats Mai in the semifinals of the tournament. In the original manga, Joey allows Yugi to face Pegasus, and Yugi agrees to give the prize money to Joey. However, in the anime, the writers decided to give these two a proper duel, which takes place in episodes 33 and 34. This is one of the very rare filler duels that takes place in the anime that's not in a filler arc. Most people don't even realize that this is filler because it fits into the pacing of the arc incredibly well, in my opinion. Let me know if you knew that this was actually an anime-only duel, and let me know your thoughts on the duel down below in the comments. Did you know that one of the most well-known internet memes in the year 2020 is actually from a Yu-Gi-Oh card? This meme is a meme that I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen, where a person is faced with two choices, a good choice and a bad choice. Well, to many people's surprise, this artwork is actually from a Yu-Gi-Oh card. The trap card Dramatic Crossroads is where this image is from. This is a trap card that was used in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX by Manjome when he dueled Asuka in episode 47. It was pretty mind-blowing to me when I learned that the origin of this meme was actually a Yu-Gi-Oh! Card, and I feel like it's something that not a lot of people even realize because it's a very obscure Yu-Gi-Oh! Card. Not really an effect to gawk at, but who knew that Dramatic Crossroads would be the origin for so many funny memes over a decade after it was first shown in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. Did you know that there was an unused and unnamed signer that was actually scrapped very early in production for the Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D's anime? Now, this was revealed in the 10th anniversary animation book, a book that is littered with behind-the-scenes information and Easter eggs, and one of the more fascinating pages is this one, where we see a design from Kazuki Takahashi himself, representing who was supposed to be the 5th signer. This was apparently scrapped right before Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds began. I mean, they even have the outline for what his ace monster, a signer dragon, was supposed to look like. This is further evidence that Crow was probably not supposed to have nearly as big of a role as he did in Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, and that was changed at some point in the middle of the show. This is one of those pieces of information that I feel like not a lot of people really know about. Let me know what you think of his design and any other thoughts you may have down below in the comments. Did you know there is a Yu-Gi-Oh! Character who took over 200 episodes before they got a win? That character was in the Rush shows, debuting in episode 1 of Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s, and getting their first win in episode 147 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush. And that character, of course, is the main villain of both 7s and Go Rush, and that is Otis. And it's not like Otis didn't have plenty of chances to get his first win. He lost 8 times in 7s and then lost his first duel in Go Rush to Udius. He eventually beat 1010 and Ron in a tag team duel, and then the very next episode would beat Yugioh and Manabu in a very impressive win. So Otis ended up getting 2 wins, but it took him 239 episodes to get his first win after his first loss in the first episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s. Absolutely unreal. Did you know there has only been one Yu-Gi-Oh! Show where the main protagonist did not duel the girl lead? Now, in some Yu-Gi-Ohs, the girl lead actually defeated the Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonist. This has not happened often, as it's only happened in Arc 5 when Yuzu beat Yuya, and 7s when Roman beat Yuga. And the only time that the girl lead did not duel the main protagonist was actually the first Yu-Gi-Oh! Show, Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters. Taya and Yugi never ended up dueling, making it the only time that this happened in a Yu-Gi-Oh! Show. I don't know if anybody would have really liked to see this duel, but given the fact that Taya was actually 3-0 and never lost any of her duels, it would have been pretty entertaining, even though I'm sure Yugi would have wiped the floor with her. Would you have wanted to see this duel? Let me know down below in the comments. Did you know that the Shadow Realm is not actually a real concept? So in the original version of Yu-Gi-Oh!, the Shadow Realm does not actually exist. The Shadow Realm was a concept created by the 4Kids team at the time in order to censor death. However, I think the Shadow Realm concept actually works better than death does in the original Yu-Gi-Oh! And what I mean by that is the Shadow Realm is a place of eternal suffering. You are stuck in basically limbo, in eternal darkness, a place of suffering. I think it works better for the concept of shadow games and Yamino games, and I think the English dub actually created a concept more terrifying than death by birthing the concept of the Shadow Realm. But let me know what you guys think. Do you actually prefer the Shadow Realm to death itself, or do you think the whole gimmick is a little cheesy? Let me know down below in the comments. Did you know that Bandit Keith actually died in the original manga? After Bandit Keith loses to Joey, he goes over and holds Pegasus at gunpoint, as long as you're watching the subbed anime version. Otherwise, he's just holding his classic finger guns. And in the original manga, Pegasus actually turns his hand into a gun and forces him to play a penalty game in which Bandit Keith loses and ends up shooting himself in the head, killing him in the original manga. Now, in the anime, we see Pegasus hit a button that opens a trap door, and Bandit Keith is flung into the ocean. Bandit Keith does show up later in the anime, but it's not confirmed if he ever does die in the anime. Either way, they made the decision not to kill him off in Duelist Kingdom, and did use him down the road as a pawn of Yami Marek in the next season. Let me know if you guys knew this, and let me know which version of Bandit Keith's story you like more down below in the comments. Did you know there have been 3 Yu-Gi-Oh! Shows that have not had their English dubs fully complete? Starting with the 2 most obvious, Yu-Gi-Oh! GX did not have the final episode of Season 3, as well as the entirety of Season 4 dubbed, and Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds had the most episodes that were not dubbed, missing the entire Neo arc, Cradle arc, as well as a good chunk of Season 3. Now, the other one is a little bit more tricky, and it's actually the most recent show, Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s. Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s had 92 episodes in the Japanese version, and only 89 of them were dubbed. The English dub decided not to dub the recap episodes and episodes that just really didn't advance the plot, which was definitely an interesting decision, but one that I don't fully disagree with, honestly, as those are episodes you could certainly skip. And out of all these 3 shows, what is the one dub that you would love to see be completed? Let me know down below in the comments. Did you know that in the trailer for Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal, a Synchro monster actually appeared and was on screen for a brief period of time? In the second trailer for the then upcoming Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal anime, we see a panning up shot of a bunch of monsters, and one of those monsters is Iron Chain Dragon. Now, this is really interesting because, as we know, Synchros did not appear and were never mentioned throughout the entire story of Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal. Now, the scene from the trailer is shown in episode 1 with a huge blank spot where Iron Chain Dragon was supposed to be. So does this mean that early on in Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal's production, Studio Gallop was planning on having Synchros being shown and utilized before changing their plans? This trailer would certainly imply that. But what do you guys think about this? Was Zexal supposed to have Synchro monsters? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Did you know there are multiple mystic monsters and cards that never actually appeared in any Yu-Gi-Oh! Series, although we know these mystic cards exist? This archetype was used by Blair in the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX anime, and based on the text of Mystic Revolution and Mystic Egg, we know there are monsters called Mystic Baby Knight and Mystic Baby Magician. However, these monsters never appeared on screen. What's even weirder is that Blair has voice lines in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links mobile app for the monsters Mystic Baby Knight, Mystic Baby Magician, Mystic Knight, and Mystic Magician. And again, none of these monsters, although they've been mentioned in other card text, have never appeared in any piece of Yu-Gi-Oh! Media, and remains to be one of the greatest Yu-Gi-Oh! Card mysteries there is. Let me know if you'd like to see these cards revealed at some point down below in the comments. Did you know that Jack Atlas's D-Wheel, the Wheel of Fortune, actually made an appearance in Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s? In episode 25, right before the Arc 2 finale duel between Nail and Yuga kicked off, Yuga and his friends visit the Goha Duel Museum, and literally right before the duel commences, we see a shot, and in the background of the museum, which contains all these famous dueling artifacts, we see Jack Atlas's D-Wheel. Now, this is really weird. I don't know if this is implying that 5Ds happened way in the past of Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's universe, or if it's maybe implying that there are multiple versions of Jack Atlas out there. It certainly makes the timeline that much more of a nightmare to try to put together, and in my opinion, it's one of the coolest direct references to an older show that any Yu-Gi-Oh! Series has done. Let me know your thoughts on this and any theories you may have down below in the comments. Did you know that Neospacian Aqua Dolphin actually showed up in Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains? Kind of. Obviously, this is a monster we all heavily associate with Judai and the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX anime, but in episode 99 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains, right when the Bowman and Playmaker duel starts, there are characters in Link Vrains getting their conscious data removed due to Bowman's plan, and one of the characters is very clearly someone dressed up as Neospacian Aqua Dolphin. Now, unfortunately, this poor cosplayer was one of the people that was struck by Bowman, so it looks like Neospacian Aqua Dolphin is just dead on the floor in Link Vrains, which is hilarious. It's clearly someone in cosplay, but it's a really cool reference to one of the more popular and well-known Neospacian monsters, which were prominently featured in the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX anime. Let me know if you caught this one down below in the comments. Did you know there has only been one on-screen kiss in the history of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, and that actually took place in Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal between Kari, Yuma's older sister, and a gambler by the name of Charlie McKay. We learn in the past that these two had a relationship before Charlie basically ghosted Kari and left her cold as night. Now, Charlie does come back into Kari's life when he is possessed by a number and performs a robbery, and at the end of his duel against Yuma, we see Charlie once again kiss Kari on the lips. However, this time the kiss ends with Kari slapping Charlie across the face, as she is rightfully upset that he walked out of her life and just planted another kiss on her without any sort of inclination that that's what she wanted. It was a little weird, but this is the only time that an on-screen kiss has ever occurred in a Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime. Let me know your thoughts on this in the comments. Did you know that Cyber Dragons were actually in Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5? Kind of. Obviously, nobody ever used Cyber Dragons in a formal duel, but in episode 147, we see a shot when Yuya is talking to Reiji of Cyber Dragon Nova on the video screen in the background. Now, all the way back in episode 3, this same video plays when Yuya and Shingo are talking, and we also see a shot of kids in the Leo Duel School with Cyber Dragon Nova seemingly battling a monster in real time. It's a shame that we never saw any of these beautiful Cyber Dragon XZ's monsters actually formally in a duel, but it is an awesome reference to Hell Kaiser, who is obviously confirmed to be in the Arc 5 universe, but sadly, just a character that we never saw. Maybe we were always meant to see Hell Kaiser use Cyber Dragons, but it will always remain a mystery to this day. Did you know there is only one Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonist who did not use a dark or light attributed ace monster? This is pretty interesting because we have 3 Yu-Gi-Oh! Protags whose ace monster is dark, and 4 whose is light, and 1 who is wind. That character is Yusei Fudo. Stardust Dragon is the only protagonist ace monster that is not a dark attribute or light attribute, which is pretty cool and certainly makes for one of the more unique ace monsters when you at least look at attributes. It's pretty funny that every Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonist is either light or dark attribute, except Yusei Stardust, and Stardust Dragon has always been one of my personal favorite ace monsters. A one-turn kill in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is when you reduce your opponent's life points from full to 0 in one turn. And the first one-turn kill that took place in the Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D's anime was actually performed by the Master of Faster, Jack Atlas. In Episode 8, Jack duels Hunter Pace, and on Jack's second turn, the third turn of the duel, Jack summons his Red Dragon Archfiend, Ace Monster. Thanks to the effect of the Lineage of Destruction trap card, Red Dragon Archfiend is able to attack a total of 4 times this turn, and on the 4th RDA attack, Hunter's life points go from 600 to 0, and Jack performs the first one-turn kill in Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. Did you know there is a Yu-Gi-Oh! Card that can inflict 700 million points of damage to your opponent? Sort of. That card is Strong Boy 7's Road. The requirement is if you have a monster in your graveyard, send the top card of your deck to the graveyard. This card gains attack equal to the number of different attributes in your grave, times 200 until the end of this turn. Then, if your opponent's life points are 700 or lower, inflict 700 million points of damage to your opponent. This is the highest amount of effect damage ever printed on any Yu-Gi-Oh! Card. It's absolutely hilarious that this is a real card that exists, and I would love to see this card in Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links one day. I think the animation of minus 700 million life points would send me into tears if I ever saw that happen. Did you know that a bunch of Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 0 characters actually were referenced in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX? In Season 4 of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, we see O'Brien looking at a computer screen and a list of names as they are disappearing due to Truman capturing them and Darkness eliminating them from the world. Well, some of these names are really familiar. We have Risa Kageyama, Karoko Himakuji, Hajime Emori, Tetsu Ushio, which of course is a Beyond Season 0 character, Goro Inogasira, Koji Naguma, Tomoya Hanasaki, and most notably, Miho, who is one of the most important characters in Season 0, at least of the characters that are on this list. An awesome reference to a bunch of Season 0 characters, and I think this is the only time that a lot of these characters are ever name-dropped in the main Yu-Gi-Oh! Franchise. Did you know that Opening 3 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5 Unleash actually lied about a duel that they foreshadowed was going to happen? At the very end of the opening, we see Yuya and Yugioh clashing as their dragons are moving upwards towards a tower that Jack Atlas, the king, is standing on top of. A lot of people took this as symbolism that Yugioh and Yuya were going to face in the finals of the Friendship Cup, with the winner facing Jack Atlas. The symbolism definitely made sense, since the two of them were clearly yelling at each other as their dragons were moving up the tower where Jack was perched. Unfortunately, this duel never came to fruition, and Yuya and Yugioh never dueled a single time. Do you believe that this was the original plans of the Friendship Cup finals, or do you think this was a classic case of the opening being a little misleading? And also, if these two dueled, who do you think would have won? Let me know down below in the comments. Did you know that in Opening 3 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal Soul Drive, the opening actually showed visuals that ended up not being accurate? We see a shot of Yuma in Zexal form versing Kaito in a duel on top of Heartland Tower. Now, there were 3 duels on top of Heartland Tower. The final is obviously between Yuma and Tron, but the semifinals see Kaito lose to Tron, as well as Yuma going on to defeat Shark. This visual implies that Yuma and Kaito were maybe originally planned to fight in the finals instead of Yuma and Tron, or were maybe originally planned to fight in the semis, as the visuals clearly show the two of them dueling in the duel sphere. However, this is a duel that never actually happens, and it's one of the few times that a Yu-Gi-Oh! Opening has completely misled the viewer. Let me know if you think this duel was the original plans for the finals, or if the writers were trying to intentionally mislead us and throw us off the course. A one-turn kill, or OTK in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is when you reduce your opponent's life points from full to 0 in one single turn. Now, this is a rare occurrence that hasn't happened all that much in the anime, but did you know the first OTK in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX was actually done by Chaz? In episode 24, Chaz duels 4 North Academy students, and in that duel he summons his Gyaku Gair Panda. The panda gains 500 attack for each monster that his opponents control. His opponents control 8 monsters, and so the panda gets a 4,000 attack point bonus. Chaz then activates Ring of Destruction to destroy the panda and inflicts its attack as damage to all players. Chaz activates Ring of Defense to prevent himself from taking damage, and thus pulls off the 4-player OTK and the first one-turn kill we see in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. Really awesome. Did you know there is only one Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonist that has a sibling? Siblings are a big part of a lot of characters' driving motivational forces. Some characters that immediately come to mind are Seto Kaiba and Kite from DM and Zexal respectively, but there's only ever been one protagonist that had a sibling, and it was an older sister, and that is Yuma from Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal. I'm kind of surprised that they didn't give more protagonists siblings, but I guess they just felt the protagonist was going to be a focal point throughout the show, and that on many occasions they didn't need to give them brothers or sisters or parents for a lot of them as well. But I still felt it would have been cool to see a lot of our Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonists have a more family dynamic to them, and it's a shame that we really only got that when it came to the sibling side for Yuma. Did you know that Yami Yugi himself actually made a cameo appearance on an episode of The Simpsons? In The Simpsons episode Magical History Tour, we see Bart and some other characters at, I would imagine, like a card shop or a game shop, and in the background there is a poster that clearly has Yami Yugi on it. Now, what's very interesting to me is the design here looks way more like the Toei Season 0 Yami Yugi rather than the Studio Gallop Yami Yugi that a lot more of us are familiar with. I would imagine The Simpsons probably got approval to use this because not only is this Yami Yugi on the wall, but we also see text that says Yu-Gi-Oh! Price Guides. I hope those kids have a lot of money, that's all I'll say. Major shout out to Twitter user Yugi Yami Love, since that is the account that tweeted this, and that's where I first saw it. And let me know if you knew about this really obscure Yu-Gi-Oh! Simpsons reference down below in the comments. Did you know there was a duel in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime where both duelists started with 0 cards in their hand? It sounds like the most ridiculous thing ever, but it actually happened. In Duelist Kingdom, which as we know was a very strange arc when it came to rulings, Kaiba took on Joey, and in this duel, Joey and Kaiba both started with 0 cards in their hand. They would draw a card, play it in attack position, and just summon the monster, and this duel really served as a proxy to just show off the technology rather than actually show off any strategy that was used, because it was a very caveman duel. There were no spells, there were no traps, and every time a character would draw, they would just summon a monster. But this makes it the only duel in Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime history where the duelists actually started with no cards in their hand. Just another day in Duelist Kingdom. Did you know there is only one Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonist ace monster that has appeared in 4 different shows? As we know, there are 8 total Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, and only one of the protagonist ace has appeared in half of those, and that is, of course, Dark Magician. Dark Magician was used in Duel Monsters, it was used in GX by Dimitri and then later Yugi, it was used in Zexal by Roku, and it was used in Sevens by Swirly and Otis. The only other 2 protagonist aces that have even been used outside of their own show are Utopia, which was used in Zexal and Yu-Gi-Oh! Sevens, and Sevens Road Magician, which was used in Sevens and Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush. Let me know if you would love to see Stardust Dragon or Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon or Firewall or Decode Talker ever show up in an anime again, and whether you think it'll happen or not down below in the comments. Did you know that there are unconfirmed rumors that the duel between Jack Atlas and Darksigner Carly was actually supposed to be a standing duel instead of the riding duel that we got in Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds? The big piece of evidence supporting this theory would be the shots that we get in Opening 2 Version 2. We see Darksigner, Carly, and Jack standing off with no D-wheel in sight. We also see Aki and Misty with no D-wheels. That ended up being a standing duel. And then we see Yusei and Kiryu with their duel runners, and that ended up being a riding duel. Shouldn't the duel runners be present in this shot with Jack and Carly? The other really interesting aspect of this is, how did Carly learn to ride a D-wheel? Was it the power of the Darksigners, or is it further evidence that maybe they felt there were too many standing duels and they wanted to add another turbo duel, and this was the duel they changed to a turbo duel at the last second? Let me know what you guys think about this down below in the comments. We all know that super polymerization was used in GX and even in Arc 5 by Yuri, but did you know that super polymerization was also in Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal? In episode 52 during the World Duel Carnival, there's a bunch of different duels happening at one point, and towards the end of the episode we can see the hand of Fall Guy's Wolf, or Wolfsbane in the English dub, and his hand contains Direct Magnet, an Unknown Trap, and super polymerization. It's insane that they actually gave this character super poly. Now, he didn't actually end up using it, but in a show that barely used fusions, to include such a powerful fusion card and then to never have him get it off is actually hilarious. And it's probably an appearance of a very famous spell card that a lot of people didn't even know existed. So super poly ended up being in 3 Yu-Gi-Oh! Shows, not 2, technically. It is a Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime staple to have their main character merge with other characters inside of them. We saw it with Yugi and Atem. Yuma and Astral is one of the more famous ones, but did you know there is only one protagonist who performed a fusion with more than one character at the same time? And it's not Yuya, because Yuya merged with Yuto, Yuri merged with Yugioh, and then Yuri merged with Yuya. There was never a triple merging of those characters on the path to Zark. The correct answer here is actually Udius. In the final episode, he merged with Yuhi and Yuamu in order to summon Ultimate Trinity Stargazer, which was a fusion of their 3 aces and was a pivotal monster in defeating Otis. The fusion between characters really did remind me of the Zexal morph, and it's the only time we've seen a protagonist fuse with more than one character at the same time. Did you know there was a pretty blatant reference to the first 3 Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonists in episode 12 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal? Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal would often feature 1-point lessons during the commercial breaks, where a character would ask a trivia question and then you would get the answer to that trivia question at the end of the episode. Well, in this episode, set trap cards were featured, and the 3 trap cards that were featured and shown as an example were Mirror Force, Hero Barrier, and Scrap Iron Scarecrow. These 3 cards were not picked coincidentally. Mirror Force is one of the more iconic Yu-Gi-Moto traps. Hero Barrier is obviously a trap for heroes that Judai used, and Scrap Iron Scarecrow is probably the most common Yusei Fudo trap used in the 5Ds anime. A really awesome reference to the first 3 protagonists that's very easy to miss in Zexal episode 12. Did you know that Dark Magician, Yugi's ace, was never actually summoned throughout the entirety of Season 0? Season 0, or the Toei Yu-Gi-Oh!, lasted 27 episodes, and while it didn't feature that many duels, dueling was one of the many games that was played throughout the season. We see Yugi summon Dark Magician in the opening, but we never actually see it summoned in the entire anime, which is crazy. The only time we see Dark Magician summoned is in the Yu-Gi-Oh! 1999 Toei film. Another really weird fact is Dark Magician had 2,000 attack and 1,800 defense in the Toei game instead of the traditional 2,500 attack we're all used to. But if you remember Dark Magician being used in Season 0, it's the Mandela effect, because he was never actually summoned in Season 0. Really, really interesting. It's common knowledge that the original Yu-Gi-Oh manga came out before the Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters anime, but did you know there is a spin-off manga that actually came out before its corresponding anime came out as well? While the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, 5Ds, and Arc 5 mangas all came out over a year after their respective animes started, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal manga was actually released 4 months before the Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal anime began. It's very strange that Zexal is the only spin-off where the manga came out before the anime did. The Zexal manga was actually the first piece of work that showed off XZ summoning rather than the Zexal anime. This is definitely one of those strange fun facts that I feel like a lot of people don't really know about, especially if you weren't following the mangas and the animes as they were being released almost a decade ago. Let me know your thoughts on this and any reasons you think this may have been the case down below in the comments. Yu-Gi-Oh! Animation errors. In episode 7 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, we see Yugi take on Mako Tsunami, and while this episode is famous for the giant soldier of stone attacking the moon, we are actually going to look at the English dub when the card Horn Imp is played. Well, the English dub accidentally shows the Japanese card for just 1 frame before cutting to its summoning. You would think this is an error that happens quite a lot because the English dub needs to change every single Japanese card to its English variant, but it really doesn't happen all that often. Well, here's an example of seeing a Japanese OCG card in the English dub. Did you know that in episode 3 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush, the episode gave an awesome reference to Seto Kaiba's Blue Eyes White Dragon? So in episode 3, Yuumu, the lead girl of Go Rush, finally summons her ace monster, Bluetooth Burst Dragon, and take a listen to the attack name. Burst Streaming of Destruction. Now, in case you don't remember, here is Seto Kaiba's famous Blue Eyes White Dragon's attack name. Burst Stream of Destruction, Burst Streaming of Destruction. I think it's safe to say that Yuumu's ace is an awesome reference to Seto Kaiba's Blue Eyes White Dragon. A really cool reference, and it'll be really fun to see if any other old school Yu-Gi-Oh! References show up throughout Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush. Did you know there is an awesome connection between Playmaker's new Firewall Dragon Link 6 monster, Firewall Dragon Singularity, and Eyes Link 6 monster, the Arrival Cyberse at Ignister? And there are a lot of connections between the two main characters of Vrains. There's a lot of really cool symbolism in their final duel between the Decode Talker monsters being similar, Link Karibo versus Ling Karibo. If you look at Singularity's Link arrows, it has the 3 Link arrows at the top and 1 pointing directly down. And then if you look at the Arrival Cyberse at Ignister's Link arrows, it's exactly the opposite. 3 Link arrows pointing down and 1 pointing directly up. This is definitely not a coincidence by any means, and it's just another really cool ode and connection between two of the most important characters in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains story. Let me know what you think of this new Link 6 Firewall Dragon down below in the comments. Did you know that Aki, Asuka, and Manjome all appear in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal anime? Well, kind of. Let me explain. So in Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal episode 22, during a shot where Yuma is arguing with his friend at school, we see 2 characters in the background that look very similarly to Alexis Rhodes, aka Asuka from Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, and Akiza Azinski, aka Aki from Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. And then in episode 76, 54 episodes later, while Yuma, Kotadi, and Astral are all in the main focus shot, we see a character off to the back right behind Kotadi that looks exactly like Manjome, Chaz Princeton from Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. Really awesome stuff. And let me know if you knew about these 3 Easter eggs down below in the comments. Did you know there was a zone reference in Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains? In episode 74, we see a scene where Yusaku meets with Akira Zaizen, and Yusaku goes in a kind of flimsy disguise where he also uses a voice modifier. And listen to Yusaku's voice modifier and then listen to the voice modifier that Zone used in Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds.
お前に伝えておくことがある。しかし アインの効果により召喚されたモンスターの攻撃力は0となる。
I think they are almost identical, and I think this is 100% a reference to the final boss of 5Ds, one of the coolest Easter eggs in Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains, and with all the different ways you could have disguised Yusaku's voice, I think this was a very intentional choice on the writer's part to pay tribute to the final boss of 5Ds. Did you know that there was a fire dragon shown in opening one of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX that never actually became a monster? I feel like this is one of the more famous instances of this rare occurrence happening, where a monster is clearly shown in an episode or in an opening that is just never turned into a card. What's even weirder about this shot is we see Bastion with a water dragon and a fire dragon in opening one of GX, and the Water Dragon was actually turned and printed into a card known as Water Dragon. I know, very creative name, but the Fire Dragon was never printed into a card. I'm surprised after all these years Konami has never turned this Fire Dragon into an actual card. What do you guys think? Do you think this proves that Bastion was supposed to have way more of a prominent role in the anime, and that's why some of his cards got cut from the show and from production? Definitely makes sense to me. Let me know down below in the comments. Did you know that the English dub opening of Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5, Can You Feel the Power, can actually be heard at one point in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains English dubbed anime? In episode 4, right as Kusanagi is giving Playmaker Decode Talker, prepping him for his upcoming duel against Go-Oh Nizuka, we can hear the radio playing a very familiar song from Kusanagi's hot dog truck. Take a listen.
Good luck. Like you'll need it.
Decode Talker.
This is certainly not the first time the English dubs have done this. The 5Ds dub opening Hyperdrive was in the English dub of Arc 5, and it's something really cool and kind of silly that the English dubs do to maybe keep a little bit of unrealistic continuity between all of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Shows. Let me know your thoughts on this down below in the comments. Did you know only one Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonist has never used a Kuriboh monster, whether it's the anime or manga? Yugimoto obviously used the original Kuriboh, Judai used winged Kuriboh, Yusei used junk Kuriboh in the 5Ds manga, but did not use any in the anime, Yuma used Kurivolt and Rainbow Kuriboh, Yuya used a plethora of Kuriboh in the Arc 5 manga, Yusaku used Sphere Kuriboh and Link Kuriboh throughout the Vrains anime, and Yuga used Kuribot in 7s. Udius is the only one that has never used a Kuriboh in the Go Rush anime or in the Go Rush manga. There still are a couple of months left, so maybe that will change, but I would be pretty surprised if he used one this late into the series, and it will be weird seeing a Yu-Gi-Oh! Protag never using a variant of Kuriboh. Did you know that the main character of Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D's Yusei Fudo actually shows up very briefly in the Yu-Gi-Oh! OCG Structures manga? So this is incredibly missable, and for those of you that don't know, the Yu-Gi-Oh! OCG Structures manga has been going on since 2019. Now, in the very first chapter of this manga, we see a character named Guide discussing the conditions for participating in the tournament going on at the card shop. Now, in the background, it's very hard to see, but you can absolutely see the outline of Yusei Fudo on a promotional poster saying, "Hey, let's duel." So this confirms that the OCG Structures world is very similar to the real life world, where Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds is probably an anime and a piece of media that these characters can watch. It's a super cool reference. Let me know if you knew about this, and let me know any other references you caught in the OCG Structures manga down below in the comments. Did you know we just had something happen in Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush that has not happened in a Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime in almost 20 years? There are many ways to lose a duel, and one of the rarest ones is to deck out, meaning you have no cards left in your deck to draw. Well, in episode 141, the duel between Manabu and Gakugen, this is exactly how Manabu wins. Gakugen goes to draw a card, and there are no cards remaining, meaning he has decked out. This this has only happened 3 times in the history of the Yu-Gi-Oh anime, and the last time it happened was episode 72 of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, which aired in 2006, and so 19 years later, we have another deck out in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime. It's certainly one of the rarest things, and it's really cool that we got to see another one almost 2 decades after the last one. Really cool. Yu-Gi-Oh! Animation errors. In Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5, Episode 30, we witness a duel between Gangenzika and Gen. Now, if you know anything about Super Heavy Samurais, which is the deck that Gangenzika plays, they are a defense position deck, meaning that they can attack using their defense position stats, and they are always in defense position. Well, at one point, Gangenzika synchro summons Super Heavy Samurai Warlord Susanoo, which is a monster that has 3,800 defense points. However, when we see the meter, it shows the 3,800 being its attack point value, which is incorrect. This specific Super Heavy Samurai has 2,400 attack. Either way, this meter should be saying defense and not attack, and this is an error that, funny enough, was not corrected in the English dub either, meaning whether you watch subbed or dubbed, this error exists. Did you know in Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5 episode 117, which is the duel between Yugioh and Rin, there was an unused set card that Yugioh never activated. At the end of Yugioh's first turn, we see him set this card while he's chasing Rin down the steps of the tower. However, this is a card that never gets utilized. It's never activated, and it's never even mentioned again. You know that it is incredibly rare for a set card to never be used or mentioned after it is set. And because this duel result was so shocking, it does make you wonder if this was the writers subliminally letting the viewer know that maybe he was not in the right state of mind to activate this card, and maybe this card could have actually got him the win. Let me know down below what card you think Yugioh set, and let me know if you think this was a bit of a message that the writers gave to us that Yugioh maybe did have a route to actually defeating Rin if he wasn't so distracted. Did you know that Seto Kaiba maybe should have actually beaten Yugimoto in the Pyramid of Light movie? Let me explain. Kaiba summons Blue Eye Shining Dragon in the middle of the duel, and Blue Eye Shining Dragon has the effect to gain 300 attack for each dragon in Kaiba's graveyard. At this time, Kaiba had 6 dragons in his grave. However, Blue Eye Shining Dragon's attack only went up by 1,500, as if there were only 5 dragons in the grave. Now, the one dragon that was not shown during this attack boost was Paladin of White Dragon. This monster has always been considered a dragon-type monster, and the running theory is that maybe the writers thought this was supposed to be a warrior-type monster, and that's why it wasn't counted in the calculation. But if this monster was accurately represented, Kaiba's attack would have won the duel here, instead of leaving Yugi with only 200 life points left. It's one of the most notable duel writing errors in probably Yu-Gi-Oh! History. I've done a full video on this that will be linked in this short if you're interested in hearing more about it. But yeah, really fascinating mistake, and if it was calculated properly, Kaiba would have won the duel right then and there. Really interesting. Did you know that 3 of the Studio Gallop protagonists' aces have now been made into the Rush Duel version of Yu-Gi-Oh? Well, obviously, Dark Magician is one of them. That was one of the earliest monsters that we got for Rush Yu-Gi-Oh! And we also got Yuma's Utopia, at least a version of it that was played by Gohei Yuka. And then last but not least, we just got Judai's Elemental Hero Neos, along with a bunch of different elemental heroes. So really cool that we are slowly seeing the Studio Gallop protagonist aces come over to the game of Rush. Which monster do you think is next? I would love to see a version of Stardust Dragon, and given that Utopia is in the game, we don't need synchros to come to Rush Duels in order to get it. We could get a vanilla version or an effect monster version, much like the baseball Utopia monster is. Let me know which other aces you'd like to see in Rush down below in the comments. We all know that Yuma Tsukumo would often utilize the number monsters in order to win duels, but did you know there were a few duels Yuma never used a number in order to win? The first instance of this is actually against Kathy in episode 9 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal. The duel is not a long one. Yuma only has 2 turns, as it's a 4-turn duel in total, but Yuma utilizes Acha-Cha Archer, as well as Gaga Magician and Baby Tyragon, and as we know, Baby Tyragon is not technically a numbers monster, making this the first duel Yuma would win in which he did not use a number card. This happened very rarely in the Zexal anime, and if you can think of another duel that Yuma won without using any of the numbers, please let me know down below.
Did you know that Pegasus, the creator of Yu-Gi-Oh!, the first antagonist in Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, is actually confirmed to be dead by the time Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds comes around? Let me explain. There is a racing tournament called the World Racing Grand Prix, and in episode 98 we get to see the sponsors of this tournament on a poster. On this poster there are a lot of awesome references to older characters. However, the most important one here is the very top sponsor company, which is the Pegasus J. Crawford Memorial Foundation. Now, you don't have a memorial foundation for someone unless they are passed away, so this heavily implies, pretty much confirms, that Pegasus is no longer alive when Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds airs. We have no idea how he passed away, and we probably will never know, but it's definitely a sombering fun fact, and one that can very easily be missed. Let me know if you knew this Easter egg down below.
Did you know that Seto Kaiba actually never saw the final duel between Yugi and Atem in the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga? In the anime, it's very clear that Kaiba and Mokuba were witnessing the duel, which took place obviously in the temple between Atem and Yugi, but in the manga, Kaiba and Mokuba were not shown at all until the very end of the final chapter, where they arrive in Egypt outside of the pyramid, right as the pyramid collapses after Atem leaves for the afterlife. So the Kaiba that we see in Dark Side of Dimensions never actually saw Atem leave for the afterlife, which could be why he was so adamant in bringing Atem back so he could duel him one last time. It's a really interesting decision that the anime team made, but yeah, in the original manga, Kaiba was not actually present for that final duel. Pretty interesting. Did you know we just had the longest Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel ever take place in Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush? Kind of. In episode 45, Udius takes on the Supreme Commander of the Duty Dukasi fleet. Well, the Dukasis have a gimmick where they literally cannot make a decision on anything, and they are able to enter a time-space where the flow of time no longer affects the outside world, meaning they can take as much time as they need to make a decision. This duel literally takes 77 years. We see Yuhi and Yuumu go from age 11 to age 88, and their age-ups are actually pretty hilarious. This technically does smash the record for the longest duel in Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime history from a time perspective. I have a feeling this is a record that probably will never be beaten. Let me know your thoughts on this down below in the comments. Did you know there have only been 5 three-way duels in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! And all 5 of those duels were within only 2 of the 8 anime. A three-way duel is when you have a matchup where it's a duelist versus a duelist versus a duelist. Now, the 2 shows where this happened in is Yu-Gi-Oh! GX and Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5. In Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, we had the three-way Pegasus, Kronos, Napoleon duel, as well as Judai, Johan, and Fujiwara towards the end of the show, and in Arc 5 we had a few of them. Most notably is probably Yuya versus Sora versus Yuto, but the other 3 ways are Yuya versus Chojira versus Shingo, and Sergei versus Barrett versus Yuya. Which one of these was your favorite? Personally, I loved Judai versus Johan versus Fujiwara, and I think that's the strongest of these 5. Huge shout out to Solid Snack for all the data compilation. Yu-Gi-Oh! Tournaments are such a staple of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, but did you know there is one Yu-Gi-Oh! Show that did not have any tournaments in the entirety of its runtime? Now, obviously, the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Had Duelist Kingdom and Battle City. GX had a tournament, one that Judai did not actually win. He was busy dealing with Sayu and, the important stuff. 5Ds, of course, had the WRGP. Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal had the World Duel Carnival, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5 had the Miami Championship, as well as the tournament in the Synchro Arc. Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s had the Goha Rush Duel Team Battle Royale, while Go Rush had the Friendship Rush Duel Tournament, which means that Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains is the only Yu-Gi-Oh! Series that never had a tournament arc, which is a shame. I think it would have been fun to see maybe Yusaku and Soulburner have a reason to duel each other. Unfortunately, we never saw it, which is kind of surprising in Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains. Did you know that Hyperdrive, the English dub opening of Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, can actually be heard very faintly in one of the scenes in Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5's English dub? In episode 58, right before Lucas Swank shows Gongenzika and Dennis the underground dueling arena in the Synchro Dimension, they are in an elevator and you can very faintly hear the opening of the 5Ds dub. Take a listen. It is incredibly subtle and very faint and even a bit hard to hear, but that is 100% Hyperdrive, and it is really cool that they made this decision to use Hyperdrive as elevator music in Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5 in the Synchro Dimension, and I actually always enjoy when the English dub does very obscure references like this. I find it to be very cool, but let me know what you guys think about this down below in the comments. Did you know there was a spell card that was used in almost every duel of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX that was completely removed from the anime as soon as it was banned in the real game? And of course, I'm talking about the meme card, Pot of Greed, which lets you draw 2 cards from your deck. And yes, for some reason, the anime always had to explain the effect of this card. Look at all of the duels that this card was used in during Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. Literally every single duelist had this card. And then when it was banned in real life after 104, that was the end of Pot of Greed. It's always funny to me when people tell me that the ban list doesn't have much to do with the cards used in the anime. I don't think there's ever been a better example than Pot of Greed as a card that was used so much that was just written out of existence as soon as it was banned in real life. Did you know there are only 2 Yu-Gi-Oh! Characters that have lost a record totaling 9 times? Now, we are only looking at losses that are shown pretty much fully on screen and are 1v1 duels. No tag duels, no duels that are off screen. Otherwise, I know Yuma lost to Bronk like 50 times. But there's only 2 characters that have reached this feat of 9 losses. The first being Chaz or Manjome from Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, who lost a total of 9 times. 5 of those were to Judai, which is crazy. And then the other one is Yuga, the main protagonist of Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s, who also lost a total of 9 times, 3 of those being to Luke. I've done a whole video outlining the top 10 for which characters have the most losses in Yu-Gi-Oh! I'll link that down in the description, but let me know if you think too many losses can really harm a character's value and growth down below in the comments. Did you know we got an awesome Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal reference on one of the new Battle and Boxer cards that was just revealed for the Duelist of Fire set? So we are getting new Battle and Boxer support, which is awesome. And one of these new cards is the trap card Battle and Boxing Cross Counter. We have number 54 Lionheart on the right, and I believe that's Chaos number 105 Battle and Boxer Comet Cestus on the left. Well, what's really cool about this is Lionheart, the monster on the right, was actually used at one point by Yuma, I believe in episode 130 of Zexal, in his duel against Alito. So this card artwork is absolutely supposed to be representative of the relationship between Yuma and Alito. 2 guys punching each other in the face. I don't know a better way to describe the dynamic between those 2 characters. Let me know your thoughts on the new Battle and Boxer support down below in the comments. Did you know that Odo Yuga may have just appeared in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush anime? The main protagonist of Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's disappeared for 2 years at the end of the show before returning to Earth in a very weird-looking outfit right before the show ended. Well, in Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush, Yugioh dons the same dual disc that is present in 7's, and in episode 20, we see the character that gives Yugioh the dual disc, and it does look very similar to the Yuga Man. Now, what's even weirder is a character named Gohei Yuna recognizes this dual disc, and she uses a deck similar to Yuga's, including having the same ace monster, 7's Road Magician. What do you guys think is going on here? Does this mean Go Rush is a sequel to 7's? Did Yuga travel to a different dimension or universe? Or is this just simply not the same Yuga from Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's? Let me know all your thoughts and theories down below in the comments. Did you know only one Yu-Gi-Oh! Card took over 25 years before it was imported into the OCG? This was a card that debuted in the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga in December of 1997 and was printed in the OCG in June of 2023. And that card is the spell card Eye of Illusion. It has the record for the longest import time of any Yu-Gi-Oh! Card, and the only Yu-Gi-Oh! Card that took over 25 years before it was imported into the OCG. Now, we certainly have cards that might exceed that length, that once they're imported might break this record, but it's crazy that at this point, towards the end of 2024, this is the only card that took 25 years to come to the game. Pretty cool. Did you know that Weevil and Rex actually had a very brief cameo in the Dark Side of Dimensions movie? I'm going to play the clip for you guys right here, and I'm going to see if you can point them out in this large crowd. Now, I'm not going to lie, when I first watched Dark Side of Dimensions, I did not see this, obviously, and I didn't even know that these two were in the movie until probably years after the movie actually came out. Now, I'm not sure if you've seen them at this point, but I am going to pause it and point towards the characters, and you can see clear as day that Rex and Weevil, two of the most annoying characters in this franchise, were actually in the audience while Kaiba was giving his speech before the Yugi and Aigami duel in the Kaiba Corp Stadium. Let me know if there were any other really cool cameos like this that I missed in Dark Side of Dimensions, and let me know if you knew that these two were actually present in the Dark Side of Dimensions movie down below in the comments. Yu-Gi-Oh! Animation errors. In episode 7 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal, we see Yuma take on Nelson in a duel. Well, in the very beginning of this duel, when Nelson opens up his D-pad, we see that his D-pad has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 monster zones, which is obviously incorrect and should be shown as 5 monster zones. I think this is one of the only times throughout the entire Yu-Gi-Oh! Animated series that they made a mistake like this, where they added an extra monster zone onto the dual disc. It's hilarious to think of the possibilities in Yu-Gi-Oh! If a character actually had 6 monster zones. Thankfully, we're not there yet with the game, and this is definitely an error that occurs very early on in Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal. The new Salamangreat monster we got, Salamangreat of Fire, is chock full of references to Ai's archetype and the character that used Salamangreat in Vrains, Soulburner. Well, first of all, this card literally looks like a Chi-Chi at Ignister, just if it was decked out in Salamangreat gear. It even has the same attack and defense point stats as a Chi-Chi at Ignister, and has a very similar effect. The pose of this monster, Salamangreat of Fire, looks very similar to this pose, which is Soulburner's Burning Draw pose that he performed in episode 49. So a really great monster in terms of references. Let me know your thoughts on if you think this monster will be a good addition to the Salamangreat archetype. Did you know that Change of Heart, the famous spell card in Yu-Gi-Oh!, actually has a monster form? In episode 71 of Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's, we see a character named Mimi Itachi summon a few monsters from her hand, and one of the monsters she summons is this very familiar creature, which is called Coconut Changel of Heart. This is obviously a monster variant of the Change of Heart spell card, and it's pretty funny that this card actually debuted on October 24th, 2021, it was just a few months later that Change of Heart, for the first time in like 18 years, would actually be shockingly removed from the ban list in the TCG. I feel like if you didn't watch Sevens or if you don't pay attention to Rush Duel, you might not know that this card even exists, but it is really cool to see such an iconic card like Change of Heart get an alternate monster variant in the Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's anime and in the Rush Duel game. Did you know there is a reference to Yuma Tsukumo, more specifically one of his abilities, in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains anime? In the second ending of Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains Writing Life, in the visuals towards the beginning, we see Yusaku and I sitting down in a tunnel that is filled with graffiti. And we have a lot of cool words on the tunnel like music, graffiti, vengeance, synchro, which would of course foreshadow synchros actually coming to Vrains, and in the top left on the left side, you see the phrase shining draw. This of course is a reference to Yuma Tsukumo's ability, Shining Draw. So maybe Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal did occur on the Vrains timeline and a very big Yuma fan decided to graffiti Shining Draw in the tunnel, and it's such a blatant Yuma reference that it definitely makes you think. Really, really cool Easter egg in this ending. We all know that censorship happens quite a bit in Yu-Gi-Oh! Most of that censorship is from the original Japanese version of the anime to the English dub, whether it be removal of guns, changing death with the concept of the Shadow Realm. There were a lot of censorships that happened in the English dub, but did you know that there were censorships that happened in the original Japanese anime version because the moments or scenes in the manga were deemed too gruesome or too dark? One of those moments is when Mai loses to Yami Marek. In the anime, she is trapped in an hourglass that is slowly filling with sand. Well, in the original manga, it's much more disturbing than that. Mai is trapped in the same hourglass, but instead of sand falling in and slowly trapping her, it's flesh-eating insects that are slowly eating away at her skin until she eventually perishes. Much, much more disturbing, and this is one of those that I'm kind of happy the original anime did censor, because, I mean, it's just gross.
There was a pretty major character that did not appear in the Dark Side of Dimensions movie, and did you know that character was actually dead by the time the movie took place? That, of course, is Pegasus in Dark Side of Dimensions. There have been many comments and threads I have seen over the years questioning where the first Yu-Gi-Oh! Villain was in this movie, especially considering how he appeared later in the Duel Monsters anime and even in the GX anime. However, DSOD is a movie sequel to the manga ending, and in the manga, Pegasus was killed by Yami Bakura shortly after the Duelist Kingdom arc, which explains why he was not in the Dark Side of Dimensions movie. I love how the anime did decide to keep him alive, and I would have loved to see him in the movie, but at least his absence makes sense, unlike Mai's, for example.
Did you know the final Yu-Gi-Oh! Number monster was just announced for release? And that is number 1 Infection Buzz King. With Infection Buzz King finally getting printed in the OCG, this means that every single number monster that was used in Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal has now been released. It's funny because this card is drawing comparisons to number 89 Diablosis the Mind Hacker, which was just banned on the most recent TCG list because it allows you to destroy a monster from your opponent's extra deck, whereas Diablosis allows you to banish a monster from your opponent's extra deck. So while the effects are certainly similar, I'm not sure if it will have the same issues that caused number 89 to eventually get banned. But what do you guys think about that? I've definitely seen a lot of interesting conversation in that regard. But either way, it is awesome that now every single Yu-Gi-Oh! Number monster has been printed. Did you know that Stardust Dragon actually appeared in a Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5 opening? In the 15-second intro of Opening 3, where the narrator is explaining riding duels and D-wheels, we see 2 silhouetted dragons. The second one is very clearly Red Dragon's Archfiend, Jack Atlas's ace, and the first one is 100% supposed to be Stardust Dragon, the ace of Yusei Fudo. I love how this is a reference to one of the greatest riding duel dual rivalries we have ever seen in Yu-Gi-Oh!, that being between Yusei and Jack. And funny enough, Red Dragon's Archfiend did actually appear in Arc 5, as a version of Jack was a prominent character throughout the show. It makes you wonder if there were original plans to have Yusei and Stardust in Arc 5, but either way, it's an awesome reference, and I love rewatching the Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5 openings. Product placement in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is not the most common occurrence, but did you know there were very clear Pepsi soda cans in an episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters? During the Duelist Kingdom arc, we see some camp food that Mai has brought the crew, and among those food and beverages are very clearly these soda cans that say Epsi on them with the Pepsi logo. Now, I tried to look this up, and I couldn't find that there was any deal struck between Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pepsi for this product placement, but I have to imagine there had to be some sort of deal in place. Otherwise, Pepsi could have very easily sued Yu-Gi-Oh! For using their product without their permission. In the English dub, the Pepsi logo is removed, and to this day, I have no idea if Konami had the approval of Pepsi to do this, or if they just did it on their own accord. Really, really interesting. Did you know that Zodiacs actually appeared in a Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime? No, not that one. In the Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains anime, episode 1, we see a bunch of duels happening in Link Vrains, and one of the cards we see in one of these duels is Zodiac Rat. And another card, more notably, is the Xyz monster Zodiac Hammer Kong. Now, this is crazy because Xyz monsters were not shown in Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains for almost 80 episodes, but it was pretty obvious from the very first episode that the Xyz mechanic actually was a thing in Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains. But keep in mind that Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains episode 1 came out in the middle of 2017 when Zodiacs were at full power or near full power in the TCG. Let me know if you would have liked to see a duelist use Zodiacs in one of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Shows, although I feel like the answer to that is going to be a resounding no. Did you know there is only one Yu-Gi-Oh! OVA that has ever been made? For those who don't know, an OVA stands for Original Video Animation, and it's usually films or special episodes of a series made specifically for in-home release format. And the only time Yu-Gi-Oh! Has ever done this was actually for a Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds duel, that being Evolving Duel Stardust vs. Red Demons, which is a special non-canon episode of 5Ds. The episode depicts Yusei and Jack Atlas dueling each other in the Fortune Cup. OVAs can be really, really cool to see alternate universes and duels, and I really wish Yu-Gi-Oh! Had done more of these throughout its running. Now, sure, it's never too late for them to tap into this, but given that this is the only one they've done, and it was back in 2008, it makes me feel like we probably will never get another Yu-Gi-Oh! OVA. This OVA can be hard to find, but definitely try to check it out if you haven't. Not too long ago, we got some new Super Heavy Samurai support, and these are awesome cards, especially if you are a fan of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5 anime. We got a tuner monster, Super Heavy Samurai Prodigy, which looks very similar aesthetically to Yugioh, our main protagonist of Arc 5. Not only do you have the goggles on the top of its head, but you also have the dual-colored eyes, which could represent odd eyes, since that monster also has two colored eyes. And you have the cape, which looks pretty similar to the one that Yugioh wears. We also got a monster that resembles the man himself, Gangenziga, Super Heavy Samurai Overlord Masuro, which looks insane. Clearly, it is supposed to be a representation of Gangenziga. Let me know your thoughts on these new Super Heavy Samurai cards down below in the comments. Did you know that the recent Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush Opening 2 may have referenced a shot in Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains Opening 3? Well, towards the end of Go Rush Opening 2, we see a shot of Go Hyuna standing outside in the dark while it is pouring rain out. This shot is very out of place, but it reminded me very much of the shot of Yusaku in Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains Opening 3, where he is also standing outside in the pouring rain. Now, Yusaku went through a lot of turmoil in that final season, including losing the person that was closest to him, which was I, and I find it very interesting that Go Hyuna in this season of Go Rush has also lost the person closest to her, that being Yuga, who was carded the same episode this opening aired. I feel like there's definitely a connection between these two shots, and it is an Easter egg to that shot in Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains Opening 3. Did you know that the original ending planned for Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains was a much darker ending than the one that we actually got? Major spoilers ahead for the Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains anime. There was a moment in episode 120 where I had a flashback of a reality that he ran when he simulated the reality to see if Ignis could coexist with the humans, and in this reality we see a completely decimated world, an apocalyptic world, where Yusaku jumps in front of Ai and is mowed down by tanks. It was revealed by a Studio Gallop team member on their website that this flashback reality was the actual planned ending for Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains. This ending was the original ending, but it was most likely scrapped very early in production, probably because it was such a dark twist on Yu-Gi-Oh! But let me know which ending you think you would have preferred, the one that we got, or this apocalyptic ending that might have seen our main character and humanity die, down below in the comments. Dueling is an essential part of any Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, but did you know there is only one Yu-Gi-Oh! Show that did not have a formal duel featured in the very first episode? 7 of the 8 Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime have had an actual duel in the first episode. The only one that didn't was Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains. Now, I know Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains shows one quick turn that Playmaker has against a generic Knight of Hanoi, but I'm talking about an actual formal duel. A lot of people praised Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains for this, as it allowed them to really set up the world of Link Vrains and Den City before jumping into the first duel, which took place in episode 2. Vrains is, and probably will always be, the only Yu-Gi-Oh! Show where a duel did not happen in the first episode. Pretty cool. Did you know there is a card that was mentioned by name in Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal that we have no idea what it does, and we have no idea what it looks like? In episode 1 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal, we see a card called Deep Anglerfish. Now, this is a card that has never been printed, and its effect reads, when this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, send one fish-type monster from your deck to the grave, then you can special summon 2 Deep Anglerfish Jr. from your deck. Deep Anglerfish Jr. is one of the super rare cases where a monster is mentioned by name in the anime, but we have no idea what it looks like. It could be a monster that is very, very useful in a rank 4 Water Xyz deck, but unfortunately, we don't know, and we probably never will know. Let me know your thoughts on the mystery of Anglerfish Jr. and the Anglerfish down below in the comments. Did you know there is a type of duel that we have only seen once in the entire 25 years of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime franchise, and that is one guy character versus 2 girl characters at the same time. Now, the show where this took place in is Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5, and if you guessed Yuya versus Ruri and Serena, you would be correct. Towards the end of the show, Yuya took on a brainwashed Ruri and Serena in a duel that gave us the Odd Eyes Raging Dragon moment, which was an incredibly badass moment, one of my favorites from the Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5 anime. With how good this duel was, maybe we should have gotten this duel type matchup more often, but it is pretty hilarious to think. We have only ever seen a 2-on-1 duel in which it's 2 girls versus 1 guy character one time in the entire franchise. Pretty crazy. Did you know there was a Yu-Gi-Oh! Card shown in an episode preview of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX that was never actually shown in the actual episode, and to this day is a card that we only know exists because it was in the episode preview? That card is Alice in Despairland, and this image was shown in the copyright section at the end of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX episode 79, which appears after the next episode preview. It's certainly a creepy card. Episode episode 80 of GX with the doll coming to life is just a creepy episode as well, and I feel like this card being a weird mystery card that was never actually used makes the lore of this episode that much more weird. What do you guys make of all of this? Do you think this card was actually going to be used, but they just scrapped it and changed plans for the dual writing of episode 80? That's personally what I believe, but let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. We all know that Yubel was one of, if not the greatest villain of the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX anime, and they were the main villain of Season 3, but did you know that Yubel actually appeared in Season 2? During Judai's duel against Sayu, which was the conclusionary duel of Season 2, Sayu decides to try to freak out Judai by showing him a vision of the future. This vision basically foreshadows Season 3, as Judai sees a buried duel academy and then is attacked by an entity that has snuck up behind him, and that entity is in fact Yubel, the ultimate nightmare. If you look at the stomach, you can kind of make out the face that is depicted on Yubel, the ultimate nightmare, and it's really cool that they actually foreshadowed Yubel in Season 2. Shout out to user Buck4321 for pointing this one out to me. And let me know down below if Yubel was your favorite villain in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. We all know that some of the duels that happened in Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters only happened in the anime and never actually happened in the manga. Well, did you know that there is a duel that takes place very early on in Duelist Kingdom that's actually an anime-exclusive duel? And no, I'm not referring to Yugi versus Joey before the Yugi versus Pegasus duel. The duel I'm referring to is Yugi versus Bakura, which takes place in episodes 12 and 13. This was their way of kind of filling in the board game arc that we see at the end of Season 0 and takes place in the manga before Duelist Kingdom. It's very similar to that arc, although it's an actual duel, and in the manga it was more of like a tabletop RPG game. But yeah, Yugi versus Bakura in Duelist Kingdom never actually happened, and the two of them did not officially duel until Battle City, which is one of my favorite duels in the entire franchise. Did you know there is only one Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime where the first character the protagonist dueled was not relevant at all for the rest of the show? And that, of course, would be Yuya Sakaki's opponent from the Arc 5 anime, the Sledgehammer. Yuya beat the Sledgehammer in his very first duel, and we never see this character again. Think about the other shows: Seto Kaiba, Crowler, Trudge, Shark, A Knight of Hanoi, Otis, and Yuhi. Now sure, you could argue the generic Knight of Hanoi might also fit this category, but I would argue the Knight of Hanoi as a concept were very important throughout the entirety of Reigns, whereas Sledgehammer is literally never talked about or heard from again, making him the only protagonist first opponent that is totally irrelevant. Did you know there have only been 2 Yu-Gi-Oh! Shows where ritual summoning was not featured? Now, the first show is a pretty obvious one if you watched it, and that is Yu-Gi-Oh! Sevens. Sevens was the introduction for Rush Dueling, and rituals were not a thing in Rush Dueling when Sevens was going on. The harder one, and I'll be pretty impressed if you got this, is Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. The third anime did not feature any ritual summoning, and it's the only Master Rule anime that never had rituals in it. Now, the 5Ds manga did have rituals, I believe once or twice, but the anime never did, and it really just speaks volumes about how ritual summoning is the meme summoning mechanic. Arc 5, we never got the ritual dimension, and ritual summoning, even though it's been in the game since the very beginning, was never even used once in Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. Pretty crazy. Did you know that the card Bonfire, which is coming out in the new set Maze of Millennia and has also caused a lot of drama within the Yu-Gi-Oh! Community due to its high price, was actually used in the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX anime? And guess who used it? One of my favorite characters, Fonda Fontaine. This awesome nurse used the card against Judai while she was a school ghoul in episode 123. The card was also later seen in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX episode 169 during Truman's duel against O'Brien, although it was never actually used, but it was shown to be in Truman's deck. kind of crazy that this harmless card used in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX has caused so much controversy and stir-up due to its high pricing, and the fact that it was in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX is crazy to me. Throughout the Yu-Gi-Oh! Franchise, we have seen many characters duel, but do you know which protagonist had the most amount of duels? And did you know that protagonist has dueled over 70 single times? So actually, only 4 of the main Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonists have dueled more than 40 times, and that starts with Yusei and Yuya, who dueled respectively 41 and 42 times. The number then jumps up a bit to 52, where we have Yuma, and of course, number 1 is Judai, who dueled 78 freaking times. He dueled almost as many times as Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's has episodes. Judai is one of my favorite characters in all of Yu-Gi-Oh!, so I'm not complaining, but this is definitely a feat that we will never see another Yu-Gi-Oh! Character come even close to when it comes to this category. Did you know that Ryo Bakura actually has a sister that was mentioned in the manga but never mentioned in the anime? Ryo has a younger sister named Amane Bakura, but unfortunately Amane Bakura passed away in a car accident along with his mother. Now in the manga we see Bakura writing a letter to his sister. He then stopped writing because Yami Bakura interrupted him. We know that his sister and his mother have passed away because of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Character guidebook, The Gospel of Truth. We also know what happens to Ryo's dad in Dark Side of Dimensions, and it really makes you feel terrible for this guy, because not only did he have to deal with Yami Bakura, but literally everybody in his family, his parents and his sister, all died. It's extremely tragic and just makes you feel terrible for Ryo Bakura. But yeah, if you didn't read the manga, you probably aren't even aware that he had a younger sister. One of the coolest elements of Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5 was seeing characters from the previous shows, or at least variants of those characters. But did you know that there were 2 pretty well-known Yu-Gi-Oh! GX characters that may have appeared in episode 106? This is still heavily debated, but in a scene which shows the academy that Asuka is at, we see 2 characters laughing that very closely resemble Bastion and Atticus. And I say this is very debated because the character on the right, the Wikipedia at least, says that it resembles Zane Truesdale, even though I've always thought that the character on the right much more resembles Atticus Rhodes. The one on the left certainly looks very similar to Bastion. What do you guys think? This is a mystery that's been going on for 10 years. I definitely think the guy on the left is Bastion. Who do you think the guy on the right was supposed to be? Let me know down below in the comments. We all know that 5D's characters appeared in Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5, like Jack Atlas and Crow Hogan, but did you know there were some 5D's side characters that also made very brief on-screen appearances? One of these characters is Dexter, who was a friend of Luna and Leo in the original 5D's anime. Another character is Divine, the leader of the Arcadia movement. We only see this brief shot of him being flung off of his D-wheel after he loses to Jack in a previous Friendship Cup. Another character is Don Piero, who actually does have a speaking role in episode 67, and probably the most notable is Lazar. Not only is his face on Neo Domino City's money bills, but he also comments about Yuya and Jack's duel in episode 98. Really cool to see all these different 5D's characters have versions of themselves in the Arc 5 anime. If there's any I've missed, let me know in the comments. We know that fusion summoning is the most common extra deck mechanic in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! But did you know that there are only 2 rivals who have never fusion summoned? And this one might be a tricky one to figure out. Well, starting with the Rush shows, the rivals all fusion summoned in there. Luke and Yugioh both used fusion, and then just going through 5Ds, Jack Atlas fusion summoned only once, but it did happen. The 2 rivals are actually Shark, who never used fusion, even though Kite, Yuma's other rival in that show, did, and Revolver, who hilariously enough has a fusion monster in Borreload Furious Dragon and gives it to Playmaker that Playmaker then uses in the final duel, but Revolver himself never actually used it. And so the answer to this question is Revolver and Shark. Those are the only two rivals that never fusion summoned. Have you ever wondered which Yu-Gi-Oh character has the most losses in all of Yu-Gi-Oh anime history? And no, we're not counting Yuma's 30 losses to Brunk. I'm talking on-screen, fully shown, one-on-one losses. And while Yuma's 7 losses and Chaz's 9 losses are definitely nothing to shy away from, the character with the most on-screen 1v1 losses is Yugioh, the protagonist of Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s. He had 9 losses in 7s, and then he actually appeared in Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush as well, where he lost another 2 times, giving him a grand total of 11 losses. That's a number that probably will not be beaten. Otis, the villain of 7s, has 8. He's in 3rd, and Joey is tied with Yuma with 7, and that rounds out our top 5. Some pretty good duelists in there like Yuma and Joey, but definitely not a top 5 you want to be a part of. Did you know there are multiple different ways of pronouncing the anime Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal correctly? This has been a debate I have seen many times online over the last decade. How do you actually pronounce Zexal? Is it Zexal or Zale? And the actual answer is both are correct. It really depends on which version you're watching. If you're watching the original version, the X actually is silent. And if you listen to Yuma right here, it's obvious that Zale is the correct pronunciation, but if you watch the English dub, they decided to make the X an actual sounding letter rather than a silent X, and they call it Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal throughout the anime. So the true answer here is both ways are correct. It really just depends on which version you are referring to, whether you're referring to the original Japanese version or the English dub. Did you know Lightning and Windy, the 2 villains from Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains, have finally appeared on a card? No, you did not hear me wrong. Their decks still have not been released, but they have appeared on an official card. In the new @Ignister support, we got a spell card named Ties, which shows all of the Ignis chilling in the Cyberse world, and this includes Lightning and Windy. This has to be one of the first times in Yu-Gi-Oh! History that a character appeared on an official card artwork before their decks were actually released in the real game. We are still waiting for Lightning's Armatos Legios and Windy's Storm Riders, and at this point, who knows when those decks will come out? We have been waiting over 5 years, and who knows how much longer we have to wait. It's crazy that these two are on an official card, but we still can't play their decks. When a Yu-Gi-Oh! Character sets a card face down, I would say 99% of the time, we end up finding out what that card is. It's super rare for the entire duel to finish and for us to never see that card revealed. Well, did you know that this happened twice in Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains? When Blood Shepherd dueled Soulburner, he had a face-down card set when Soulburner went for the win, but the duel was cancelled, and so his face-down card was not activated. And for Ghost Girl, when her and Blood Shepherd teamed up against Robapi, she set a face-down card during her turn, and for the rest of the turn, plus all of Robapi's turn, including the final turn, the card was never revealed. It's really weird that this happens so rarely, and it happened for these two characters considering they are half siblings. Shout out to user Fender Bullet for discovering this one, and let me know your thoughts on this and who would have won that duel between Soulburner and Blood Shepherd had it finished down below in the comments. We all know there are only 3 Blue Eyes White Dragons in existence, as there were 4 and Seto Kaiba destroyed the 4th copy. But did you know in episode 55 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, we see a 5th copy, if you will, of a Blue Eyes White Dragon card. Right before the gang goes into a shop in order to register for the Battle City tournament, they are looking at cards on display in a shop window, and one of those cards is very clearly Blue Eyes White Dragon, which literally goes against the entire premise of there only being 4 copies of Blue Eyes. Now, perhaps this card is a counterfeit card, as as the shop was being run by the Rare Hunters, so who knows, it was probably just an oversight error, but certainly a very funny one given the implications. Shout out to Crimson Dragon for pointing this one out.
Did you know that Yugi's mom and the Paradox brothers make very brief cameos in the Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's anime? In episode 75, we see Roman talking about how her and her friends don't really know Yuga all that well, as they are trying to find out who the final sibling in Goha is. As Roman is talking about Yuga's background, we see a silhouette that looks very similar to Yugi's mother, and when she brings up Yuga's potential siblings, we see two silhouettes that are identical to the famous pose of the Paradox brothers. Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's is filled with these really cool Easter eggs and cameos that really don't mean anything, but also pay tribute to the old Studio Gallop Yu-Gi-Ohs that gave a foundation for this animated series to stand on over the last 20 years. Let me know if you guys know of any other references to older Yu-Gi-Oh! Shows in 7's down below in the comments. Did you know that Elon Musk once liked a Yu-Gi-Oh! Tweet? Back in March of 2019, Elon Musk liked this video on Twitter. Now, you don't think too much of it, it's just an anime character doing a perfect landing off of a balance beam, but you quickly realize that this scene is actually a scene from Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal. The most logical reason that he liked it is not necessarily that he's a fan of Yu-Gi-Oh! Or watched Zexal, but rather that he was insinuating that the SpaceX was going to have a perfect landing, much like this character landed perfectly off the balance beam. But regardless, Elon Musk liking a Yu-Gi-Oh! Tweet is something that I never thought I would ever see, and I certainly never thought I would be making a video covering anything that Elon Musk does, but, well, here we are. Is he the most famous celebrity who's ever liked a Yu-Gi-Oh! Related tweet? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. A one-turn kill in Yu-Gi-Oh! Happens when you reduce your opponent's life points from full to 0 in a single turn. And today we are looking at the first OTK performed in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal anime, which happened in episode 8 during the duel between Yuma and the Sparrow. It actually took all the way to turn 8 for Yuma to deliver his first points of damage to Nelson, and it's a very short turn. Utopia had 5,000 attack thanks to his Fiery Fervor spell card, and Yuma declares that Utopia attacks Galaxy Queen, but at this point, Nelson decides to activate his face-down Star Sparrow forever to revive Esper Star Sparrow with 0 attack points and change the attack target to it. Utopia, of course, delivers the blow to Esper Star Sparrow, reducing Nelson's life points from 4,000 all the way down to 0, making this the first one-turn kill in Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal. We all know Joey Wheeler is the luckiest duelist alive, and one of his main cards, especially in Duelist Kingdom, was Time Wizard. Well, did you know that there is only one instance of Time Wizard's effect actually failing to get off? When Time Wizard activates its Time Roulette or Time Magic effect, it spins a wheel, and as long as the arrow doesn't point to the skull, a good effect happens. Now, sometimes this does positively affect the opponent's monster as well, but only one time did this effect actually land on the skull, and that happened in his duel against Bones. This negative effect went off, and Joey took damage equal to half the attack of Flame Swordsman. But it's unbelievable that this effect only failed to get off one single time out of the tens of times that Joey used this card. He really is the luckiest duelist in the world. Did you know there have only been 2 major Yu-Gi-Oh! Villains that actually never lost a duel? Lightning from Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains might come to mind, as he dueled a total of 3 times and actually won every single duel he was a part of. He was absorbed by Bowman, who was the final villain of that arc, and would eventually lose to Playmaker, but Lightning himself never lost. The other villain that never lost was Yubel. Now, while Yubel was not as potent
as Lightning was in terms of winning all of their duels, Yubel ended up never losing a duel, including getting a no result against Judai in the final duel of Season 3, as the two of them merged due to super polymerization. I'm not sure if there are any other villains that fall under this category, but I'm pretty sure these are the only two villains that never lost a single duel, which is really cool. Did you know there is only one girl lead across the 8 Yu-Gi-Oh shows that did not debut in the very first episode? The lead girl being in the first episode is a staple of every Yu-Gi-Oh, except Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. Akiza, the main girl lead, actually did not debut until episode 14, making 5Ds the only Yu-Gi-Oh! Show where the lead girl was not present in the first episode. And it's pretty funny because Akiza is considered by a lot of fans to be one of, if not the best, Yu-Gi-Oh! Girl in the entire franchise, so I guess being around in the very first episode is not correlated with being a good character. Do you think Akiza is the best girl in all of Yu-Gi-Oh? Let me know down below. Did you know that the Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains director actually took to Twitter 3 separate times and apologized for the recap issue? After episodes 21, 29, and 38, which were all recap episodes, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains director went on Twitter and tweeted, "We have no excuse. I hope that everyone will still continue watching despite all of this." And after the episode 38 recap, the message was much longer, where the director of Vrains said he does not enjoy seeing recaps in a show that he looks forward to every week either. Once again, I'm very sorry about this. This is all the proof that anyone should need that shows the Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains production behind the scenes was in peril during the show's runtime. It's still pretty impressive that they were able to put together a very coherent show despite all of the production issues it faced. Let me know your thoughts on all of this down below in the comments. Did you know that the main character from the video game Yu-Gi-Oh! Rush Duel Dawn of the Battle Royale actually appeared in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime about a week before the video game released? In Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's episode 60, we see Swirly bump into a character in a library, and that character happens to be the main character from the video game. The main character, who is known as the Player, apologizes and says he's in a hurry because he has to have a Rush Duel with his friends. It's the only appearance he makes in the anime, and I think it's the only time a main video game exclusive character ever appears in any Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime. Really, really awesome cross promotion, and if you didn't know about the video game, you probably have no idea who this intricately designed character in Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's was supposed to be. Did you know there was a Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime that had a major chief director change only 13 episodes into its showing, and that was, of course, the production-plagued Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains. At episode 14, it was announced that Hosoda Masahiro had stepped down from the role of chief director, and the man that took over was Asano Katsuya. Episode 13 was the first of the many recap episodes that we got in Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains, and to this day, no reason has ever been provided for this director change. We have no idea if Hosoda, who was the original director, left or was removed from the role. We have no idea. Now, episode 14, we finally saw less generic Link summonings, we saw more diverse backgrounds, and so it definitely seemed like the new director cared a little bit more about the presentation. Could be a reason why a lot of those early plot points, like the chess pieces, were also scrapped. Did you know that we actually have had a Yu-Gi-Oh! Series before that was revealed after the Jump Festa event? In a recent video where I went over if weekly Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime might be over, I said this: Jump Festa is the event where 7s, Vrains, Arc 5, Zexal, 5Ds, GX have all been announced and have all been revealed. Now, I ended up being a little incorrect on this because Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds was actually revealed to us after Jump Festa, where usually the new anime series is shown. According to Maiden Days on Twitter, a very good and informed user in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Twitter community, she revealed some articles that show 5Ds was actually revealed via articles after Jump Festa aired in January. Maybe this is a little hope that Yu-Gi-Oh! 9 might actually still be announced, although I still think the odds are very, very low. Let me know what you guys make of this, and let me know any predictions you have for Weekly Yu-Gi-Oh! Down below in the comments. Most Yu-Gi-Oh! Fans know that the Noah's Virtual World arc and the Doma arc were filler arcs that did not happen in the original manga, but did you know there was also quite a bit of filler in the Battle City semis and what's known as Battle City Part 2 in the anime? For starters, the duel between Kaiba and Joey, the third place duel, does not actually happen in the manga. It goes straight from Yugi defeating Kaiba into the Yugi-Marik duel. Also, Joey having this weird dream duel in order to come back to life while Yugi and Kaiba's duel is going on is not actually a thing in the manga either. You also have smaller moments like Serenity being by Mai's bedside during the Joey and Marik duel, even though in the manga, Serenity is watching the duel the entire time. It's pretty wild that they even had to pad for time in the main arcs and sprinkle it with filler throughout. Pretty crazy. Did you know there was a Yu-Gi-Oh! Opening that lasted seemingly forever? There has only been one Yu-Gi-Oh! Opening that lasted over 70 episodes, this one lasting 71 episodes, and that was Yu-Gi-Oh! GX's second opening, which is 99%. This opening started in episode 34 and lasted all the way through the end of season 2, which was episode 104, making it the longest Yu-Gi-Oh! Opening ever. There is no other opening that really comes close to this. I believe Warriors is in second place, and that lasted for about 57 episodes. So yeah, 99% will probably always hold this record, and it's crazy to me that this opening lasted for almost a year and a half, because any opening lasting for more than a year is extremely rare and has only happened a handful of times. At least it's one of the best openings ever made, in my opinion. Over the years, we have seen many Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonists rack up a lot of dueling victories. But did you know there is only one Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonist that has a win streak larger than 12, and that win streak is 28. Now, you might think Yusei or Yusaku, since they never lost an on-screen duel, but they had their fair share of draws or no results, and that, of course, breaks up the consecutive win streak. Yuma from Zexal is actually second place with 12, and the protagonist that has the most wins in a row is none other than Judai from Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. At one point, Judai got 28 straight wins between his loss against Edo and his draw against O'Brien. It's an unbelievable win streak that no other character has even come close to, and I don't think we will ever see this record broken in Yu-Gi-Oh! I believe the old saying is, you're only as good as your greatest rival. Did you know there is only one Yu-Gi-Oh! Movie that Seto Kaiba, the main rival of Yugimoto, never appeared in? He ended up dueling Yugi in 3 of the 4 movies, the Season 0 Toei movie, the Pyramid of Light movie, and of course, Dark Side of Dimensions. However, Bonds Beyond Time, the movie that featured Yugi, Jaden, and Yusei teaming up to duel Paradox, Seto Kaiba was not featured in. We do, however, know that he was involved in the storyline as Paradox played the monster Malefic Blue Eyes White Dragon. I always felt that Bonds Beyond Time was a little too short, and I would have loved to see Kaiba take on Paradox in the first half of the movie. Felt it would have been a really good job to build up Paradox's character. But yeah, this is the only movie Kaiba never technically appeared in, although he clearly was still involved in the storyline, which is pretty funny. Did you know the infamous Konami code was actually referenced in the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Series? In the Coliseum duel between Yugi and Kaiba, Kaiba activates the spell card Enemy Controller and then proceeds to do this.
左右 A B
Now, it's important to know that the last 4 digits and inputs of the Konami code are actually left, right, B, A, so the code is a little out of order, but still, I do believe this is 100% a reference to the Konami code. Kaiba inputs this code on Enemy Controller in order to control Yugi's monster. Granted, there's no need to do that because that's simply the effect of enemy controller, and this moment is so unnecessarily extra that it's hard for me to believe this isn't a reference to the Konami code. But what do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts on this down below in the comments. Did you know that Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal's second opening lied about a duel? We've done a few of these types of videos, and we've talked at length about how Yu-Gi-Oh! Openings sometimes mislead the viewer. Well, in opening 2 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal, we see this panning shot from left to right, in which it clearly shows Yuma dueling V, or Quinton in the dub, the oldest of the 3 Arclight brothers. However, this is a duel that never actually takes place. Yuma literally duels the entire Arclight family. He duels Tron, he duels 3, and he duels 4 in a tag duel, but he literally never squares off against V, which makes this shot so fascinating. The next opening would of course show Yuma and Kaito fighting in the duel sphere, and so I feel like this was done intentionally throughout Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal in order to mislead the viewer. Let me know your thoughts on this, and let me know if you would have liked to see this duel down below in the comments. Did you know there is only one Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonist that did not duel at least 30 times? Every Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonist has at least 32 duels, but this one only dueled 24 times. Now, you might guess Yuga because Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's only had 92 episodes, but you would be wrong. The actual answer to this is Playmaker, who only dueled 24 times in Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains. I think there's 2 big reasons for this. Number 1, in comparison to the Master Rule shows, Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains had about 30 episodes less than the average show length, and Master Duels just take much longer to show in comparison to Rush Duels. It sucks that we didn't get another 26 episodes or so in Vrains, but Playmaker will probably always have this record as the least amount of duels a Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonist has ever had. Did you know that Ancient Fairy Dragon is the only Signer Dragon that has never gotten an upgraded version of itself? And I believe that's going to change in just a few days. It has been announced that Luna will be a special guest at this year's Jump Festa, which is this coming weekend in Japan, and it is almost inevitable that we are getting Ancient Fairy Dragon support announced, and that almost definitely means that we are going to be getting an upgraded ace of Ancient Fairy Dragon. No other Signer Dragon has caused more issues for the game than Ancient Fairy Dragon, as it's the only Signer Dragon that's been on the ban list multiple times, so we'll see what this upgrade entails. I would love to hear your prediction for what the upgrade name is going to be. I'll give you one: Celestial Fairy Dragon. I feel like that one would be pretty cool. Let me know all your expectations for this upgrade down below in the comments. Did you know that the romantic comedy anime Toradora actually had a really fun Yu-Gi-Oh! Reference that appeared in it? In episode 14, Kushieda Minori was asking Takasu if they wanted to exchange pictures, and the way that she proposed this was very Yu-Gi-Oh!-like. Between the words, the mannerisms, and just how over-the-top Minori is during this scene, I think she would do great in a Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime. This is one of those really cool moments where clearly someone who worked on Toradora is a fan of Yu-Gi-Oh! And wanted to pay tribute to that franchise. Shout out to my friends Nicole and Dredger for pointing this out to me. And let me know some other in-scene Yu-Gi-Oh! Tributes like this that you know of down below in the comments. Did you know the origins of the creepy Joey Chin meme was actually inspired by professional wrestling? Let me explain. So back in 2019, a Twitter user known as Yami M direct messaged one of the animation directors that worked on the original Yu-Gi-Oh!, Takahiro Kagami. Takahiro Kagami confirmed that the Joey Chin meme was inspired by famous Japanese wrestler Antonio Inoki. Inoki worked with Tokyo Pro Wrestling for 32 years. If you take a look
look at this picture, you can definitely tell where the Joey Chin meme inspiration came from in regards to this wrestler. Now, this all stemmed from a headcanon that Kagami had, where he felt that Joey would have been a fan of wrestling, and that eventually led to Joey having a pronounced chin, like the famous wrestler Inoki. Really cool to know where one of the most iconic Yu-Gi-Oh memes stems from, and let me know if you knew about this fun fact down below.
Did you know that the Sunny NPC from the Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains world in Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links is actually cosplaying a monster? So when we first see Sunny, she looks like your average cat girl cosplayer, but what's really cool about this is her outfit is actually based off of a Ghost Trick monster. Ghost Trick Neko Musume is very clearly the inspiration for Sunny's cosplay, and furthermore, the term Neko Musume actually means the daughter of a cat, but the literal translation is cat daughter or cat girl. So there is clearly a lot of depth and layers to the meaning and symbolism behind the design of the Sunny NPC in Vrains world, and I think that is a super, super cool thing. Did you know there was an evil swarm monster that actually showed up multiple times in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains anime? As you're probably aware if you watched Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains, no character actually ran evil swarms, and it's one of the many archetypes that was never formally used in the many Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime. But in the very first episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains, we see a duelist using evil swarm Mandragora, and then in episode 18, when we're going through the Zaizen flashbacks, we see baby Aoi Zaizen holding an evil swarm Mandragora doll. I always found it really weird that this monster showed up multiple times very early on in Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains. It always made me wonder if there was plans to have a duelist use evil swarms in the future of the Vrains anime. Given how many storyline changes there were in Vrains, who knows? It definitely could be possible. Let me know your thoughts on this, and if you would have liked to see a duelist play evil swarms down below in the comments. A Yu-Gi-Oh! Movie where it was Yu-Gi-Oh! Versus GX. Well, did you know that this was a real thing that was proposed? Takahashi did go over a concept for the film, which would have seen the cast of GX going to Domino City. Over the course of the film, Sayu would pit Yugi and company against Judai and company, while he made some kind of deal with Kaiba Corp. Now, we did get elements of this in Season 2 of GX, where Sayu was the main villain of that season, and the crew did go to Domino City for an episode. Unfortunately, this movie never got off the ground, and I think it would have been amazing to see a movie where characters from the original show dueled characters from GX. Season 2 of GX isn't necessarily my favorite, so I think I would have honestly preferred to see this movie, and it's a shame we never got it, and we never will. Let me know if you would have liked to see this movie down below in the comments. Did you know that in the Disney TV show Amphibia, there was a really cool Yu-Gi-Oh! Reference that was made in the show's penultimate episode, episode 57, titled All In? We see a shot of Marcy Wu's room. We see a collection of a bunch of different items, and one of those items is a Millennium Puzzle. This is obviously a reference to the Pharaoh and Yugi Moto's Millennium Puzzle, an object that is so symbolic and important to the entire story of Yu-Gi-Oh! So does this mean that an Egyptian pharaoh is residing within Marcy, and she is the one who put the puzzle together? Okay, obviously not, but it's still a really, really cool reference, and it's so cool that a show, even in 2022, can make a Yu-Gi-Oh! Reference and have a really awesome Yu-Gi-Oh! Easter egg in it. Let me know if you watched Amphibia and what you thought about it, and let me know any other Yu-Gi-Oh! References that you've spotted in other shows down below in the comments. A one-turn kill in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is when you reduce your opponent's life points from full to 0 in a single turn. This doesn't happen too often in the anime, but it certainly does happen from time to time, and the first one-turn kill in Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5 was actually in the very first duel between Yuya and the Sledgehammer. During the 5th and final turn of this duel, Yuya attacks the Sledgehammer's Battle Guard King with Odd Eye's Pendulum Dragon. Thanks to the effect of Odd Eye's Pendulum Dragon, the battle damage doubles since it's battling a level 5 or higher monster.
Therefore, this attack deals exactly 4,000 points of damage, and the Sledgehammer's life points get reduced from 4,000 all the way to 0. Yugioh would only go on to perform 2 more OTKs for the rest of the series. Certainly not something that happens a lot. We have had 3 Yu-Gi-Oh movies. Yu-Gi-Oh! The movie, Pyramid of Light, Yu-Gi-Oh! Bonds Beyond Time, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Dark Side of Dimensions. Well, which one do you think is rated lowest to highest? The lowest rated movie is Pyramid of Light. Critics gave it a 6%, making it the second worst rated animated movie of all time, while the audience gave it a 49%, still not considered too good. The movie with middle ratings is Bonds Beyond Time. There's actually not enough critic ratings to give this a percentage, but the audience gave it a 68%, and then the highest rated movie is the most recent one, Yu-Gi-Oh! Dark Side of Dimensions, where critic ratings actually have it at a 40%, and audience gave it a 76%. I really hope we get another Yu-Gi-Oh! Movie at some point in the future, but let me know what you think of these ratings and how you would rate these movies down below in the comments. Did you know the Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters anime actually had an English dub that was uncut? And what I mean by that is they used the original dialogue, the original Japanese card text, and the original soundtrack and just dubbed the voice lines like you would see with a lot of traditional dubbed anime. Now, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is known for doing, wacky censorship and changes for whatever reason, but 9 episodes, the first 9 episodes of DM were actually dubbed uncut, and you can still find these episodes on the internet. Unfortunately, they only did 9 episodes. Take a look at the Exodia call from the uncut dub.
The card I pulled is Exodia, the Forbidden One.
What the? You're saying you performed a miracle?
Hellfire's Rage, Exodo Flame!
It's weird hearing the Japanese soundtrack in the dub, but I think it's pretty cool. Did you know there have only been a couple of shows where a tag duel was never actually shown? Now, a tag duel by these standards, of course, is a 2v2 duel. And the first Yu-Gi-Oh! That did not have a tag duel was Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains. Up until Vrains, every single series had a 2v2 duel shown at some point or another. Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s then followed Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains and also did not have any tag duels. We finally got another one when Udius and Gohei Yuna took on 2 versions of the Lug, but it's crazy that tag duels were such a big staple of Yu-Gi-Oh! And then for 2 full shows just totally went away. And I think it would have been cool to see a 2v2 in Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains at some point. Maybe Playmaker and Soulburner versus Revolver and Spectre. That would have been a lot of fun. Let me know your thoughts on this down below in the comments. Ritual summoning, the forgotten method. And most of us know that ritual summoning appeared in every single Yu-Gi-Oh! Show except 2. Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds and Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s. But did you know there are only 2 Yu-Gi-Oh! Mangas that actually featured ritual summoning? Obviously, the original did, which featured many ritual monsters throughout its run, and the other Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga that featured a ritual monster was, hilariously enough, Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, which was one of the only spin-off shows that did not have a ritual monster in its anime. In the 5Ds manga, we see a ritual summoned by Lazar of all characters, making 5Ds and the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga the only 2 manga to feature ritual summons, which is crazy. It would have been cool to see more ritual love throughout the franchise, but it's called the Forgotten Method for a reason. Did you know that the Dark Signers were actually referenced in Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush? So obviously the Dark Signers are an antagonist group in 5Ds, and in Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush episode 53, we see Dormammu graffitiing before they are stopped by some construction workers, and Dormammu is graffitiing the Dark Signer symbols. We have the sign of the giant, the sign of the hummingbird, the sign of the monkey, and I believe the one on the top right is spider, but I'm not 100% sure on that. It could be the lizard. I'm really not sure. But either way, this is an awesome reference to the Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D's Dark Signer group, and it's obviously not a coincidence that these are the 4 hylographs that were picked to show off in this episode. A really cool 5Ds reference in Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush. Did you know there have only been 2 Yu-Gi-Oh! Girls that have defeated the final villain of a show in a duel? Now, quickly going through the final villains, we have Yami Bakura, Darkness, Zone, Don 1000. Arc 5's kind of a weird one, but I would go with Zark, and then Otis for the last 2 shows. Now, the first is Reira, who finished off Zark in that long gauntlet duel, and the second is Roman, who dueled Otis simultaneously with Luke and Gakuto in a one-on-one duel in episode 24 of Sevens, which makes Reira and Roman the only 2 girl characters to defeat a final Yu-Gi-Oh! Villain in a duel. Shout out to my friend Pink Penguin for this one. Really cool fun fact. Did you know there was a character known as the Baryon Observer that was supposed to give Kite a secret card that would have defeated the Baryons that never ended up showing up? For the official summary of episode 130, it states that Kite rushes to meet the one person whom told Dr. Faker about this world, a boy named Alko. Alko calls himself the Baryon Observer, whom exists separately from the 7 Baryon Emperors, and then in the preview for episode 131, it states that Kite receives the Closed 8 from Alko, a trump card to use against the 7 Baryon Emperors. Obviously, this card never ended up appearing in the show, and the character Alko never appeared in the show either. It'd be really fascinating to see the story play out with these characters and this card, but what do you guys make of this? I think the Baryon Onslaught arc was a really, really good arc regardless, and it probably didn't need this character or this storyline. Did you know there has only been one Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime that actually had a delayed start? What I mean by that is it was originally announced to start in a certain month, and then it ended up starting, in this case, 6 weeks later due to delays and issues going on behind the scenes. And that show is none other than Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains. When Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains was first announced, all the way up until March, it was announced to start in April. However, when we got to late March, in a V-Jump article, they came out and said that Vrains was actually going to start on May 17th, delaying the show's start by over 6 weeks. To this day, again, we're not 100% sure why this happened, but given that Vrains was in recap hell for the first season, it's pretty obvious that Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains was delayed due to issues going on at Studio Gallop at the time, and of course, Vrains would be the final show that Studio Gallop ever did. A recap episode or a clip show episode is when the episode of a show primarily focuses on things that have already happened in that show. And did you know there are 2 Yu-Gi-Oh! Shows that seem to have been plagued by recaps? The first and most well-known is Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains. Vrains suffered 4 recap episodes in a 25-episode span, and after 3 of those recap episodes, the director came out and apologized on Twitter. Well, the other show is Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush. Go Rush had 3 recap episodes in a 21-episode span, which was episodes 128, 138, and 149. It goes without saying that having a weekly running show that does not really stop for any breaks is very, very challenging, and maybe these are some signs that Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime should move to a more seasonal structure in the future instead of weekly. Would love to know your thoughts on this. A one-turn kill in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is when you reduce your opponent's life points from full to 0 in one single turn. This does not have to happen on the first turn, and the first OTK in Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains was actually performed by Playmaker. In episode 7, Playmaker takes on Aoi Zaizen Blue Angel, and Aoi becomes possessed by the virus that Spectre planted within her, and so during that last turn, she's freaking out, and Playmaker is able to raise his Encode Talker's attack all the way up to 6,100 and attack Holly Angel. In this one blow, Playmaker deals Aoi 4,300 points of damage, reducing her life points from 4,000 to 0, and then Aoi would fall comatose. Certainly not a great start for her in Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains. Throughout the various Yu-Gi-Oh anime, we have seen insert songs or opening and ending songs used to add some extra emotion to whatever scene is going on. For instance, when you say Axel synchro summoned for the first time, we had Clear Mind playing in the background. These insert songs don't happen often, but did you know that one Yu-Gi-Oh episode had 8 different lyrical songs play in the episode? This is the record by far, as I don't think any other Yu-Gi-Oh episode had more than 2, and that would be the finale of Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush, episode 151, in which they played all 3 openings and all 5 endings. While some of these song usages did feel a little bit shoehorned, I think overall it was an awesome way to add to the emotion of the final episode and the overall impact of the ending of Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush. What are your thoughts on insert song usage? Personally, I love it, but let me know your thoughts down below. Did you know Pandora, or Arcana in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters English dub, actually had Obelisk the Tormentor? Well, not really. You see, in the English dub, they use card replacements sometimes to replace any tracings of the Japanese card artworks in the English dub. And sometimes they choose really weird and random cards. No greater example than this is when Arcana had his Mystical Guillotine spell card replaced with what is very clearly Obelisk the Tormentor. I don't think there's a more famous or ridiculous card replacement than this one, considering there was only one Obelisk the Tormentor, as it was a god card, and it was obviously in the possession of Seto Kaiba. I have no idea why the English dub team decided to do this. Maybe it was for giggles. I can't imagine this was a genuine mistake that somebody made, and it must have been an inside joke, like, oh, we're gonna put Obelisk the Tormentor in here and see if anybody notices. That's the only thing that makes sense to me, but it certainly makes for one of the most comical dub errors, if you will, that was made in replacing the card text, because from a story perspective, this obviously makes no sense, but it is hysterical nonetheless. Did you know that the 5Ds manga was actually blatantly referenced in Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s? In episode 76 of the 7s anime, we see Yuga and Kaizo looking at a promotional poster for a ramen shop in which we see a horseman holding chopsticks and a ramen bowl behind him. Well, when we compare it to the 5Ds manga volume 5 cover, we can see that this is a blatant reference to the 5Ds manga. Yusei and the horseman have the same exact pose, and even the dragon in the 5Ds logo looks very, very similar to the horse that's at the top of the promotional poster. It's important to note that the 5Ds manga was written by Masahiro Hikokubo, and Hikokubo was the main duel writer for the Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's anime, so I'm sure he absolutely loved this little reference, and it's one of the coolest Easter eggs in Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's. Did you know Yu-Gi-Oh! Made reference to one of the most famous venues in New York City, that being Madison Square Garden? In episode 55 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush, we see Yuumu sporting a bag that says Matsuba Square Garden Dueling Club. Now, this dueling club has not been mentioned at all outside of this one scene, and the first thing I thought of was MSG, Madison Square Garden. It's gotta be a reference to that. And I know some of you might say that it's a stretch, but you have to remember this is one of the most famous venues in the world, and it apparently is also super well known in Japan. And with how much Rush Yu-Gi-Oh! Loves to reference pop culture, I'm absolutely convinced that this is supposed to be an Easter egg for the famous Madison Square Garden. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. OCG Structures has done it again. The OCG Structures manga just hit chapter 74, and there are a lot of callbacks to the mainline Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime in the Structures manga. Well, in chapter 74, we had a character that cosplayed as Revolver from Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains, as well as a few characters cosplaying as Knights of Hanoi. It's unbelievable that we actually have Vrains characters in a manga manga styling, because Vrains is the only Yu-Gi-Oh anime that never got a manga. So there's something really cool yet really frustrating about this, because we have people that can do the Vrains art style in manga form, but Konami or whoever just does not want to give us a Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains manga. So really cool callback to Vrains, but definitely an annoying one because Vrains doesn't actually have its own manga.
Did you know we have only seen multiple Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonists fuse their monsters together in order to create a newer monster on 2 occasions? The most recent one just happened in episode 39, where the protagonist of Sevens and Go Rush fused together Sevens Road Magician and Transamu Reinek in order to summon Transamu Road Reinek. Well, this occurrence also happened once before in the Bonds Beyond Time movie, and that was actually between Judai and Yusei. During the duel against Paradox, Judai uses polymerization to fusion summon Elemental Hero Neos and Junk Gardna in order to summon Elemental Hero Neos Knight. These are the only 2 occurrences in the entire history of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime that we have seen 2 protagonists combine their monsters and summon an even greater one. Let me know some other dream fusion combinations you wish we saw down below in the comments.
We have seen many amazing voice actors throughout the Yu-Gi-Oh! Franchise, but did you know there is only one Yu-Gi-Oh! Voice actor on the English dub side that has actually won a Grammy? In 2012, this man, Andrew Rannells, won a Grammy Award for Best Musical Theater Actor, and Andrew voiced a couple of characters in the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Series, most notably Noah Kaiba. Now, Andrew did not reprise these roles, as Noah Kaiba has just come to the game of Duel Links with a different voice actor. I'd have to imagine the cost of paying him was probably too high for Konami, but hilariously enough, in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, he also voiced Wheeler the Dueling Monkey. And if you told me the only Yu-Gi-Oh! English VA who's won a Grammy voiced Wheeler the Dueling Monkey, I don't think I would ever believe you. Just unbelievable. But yeah, a really, really cool voice acting fun fact. Yu-Gi-Oh! The movie, otherwise known as Yu-Gi-Oh! Pyramid of Light, has certainly baffled Yu-Gi-Oh! Theorists on whether this movie is canon to the original anime or not. Well, did you know that the English dub actually explicitly references Pyramid of Light in this scene right here?
What are you so worried about? It's not like he has the Millennium Eye anymore. Everything's cool.
Good point. Last time we saw him, he was a little less creepy.
Tristan talking about Pegasus and the last time they saw him has to be a reference to Pyramid of Light, because this is the first time they really talk about Pegasus in the DM anime post-Duelist Kingdom. Now, this doesn't necessarily confirm it's canon, because this is not present in the original version, and you have to go by the original source material when theory crafting, because the dub sometimes does and says some wacky things. But what do you guys think? Is Pyramid of Light canon? Let me know down below. The classic comeback in Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime is when a duelist has 100 life points and then they somehow miraculously turn it all around. But did you know there is only one 1v1 duel that Yugi Moto never lost any life points in? And that would be the duel against Seeker, also known as the Exodia Rare Hunter. In episode 57, Yugi goes on to defeat Seeker as he's able to figure out his Exodia strategy and destroy it, and subsequently win the duel. Now, Seeker's entire strategy was just to stall so he could get all the pieces of Exodia in his hand and achieve the auto-win condition. So it definitely makes sense why Yami Yugi's life points were never in any danger, but it's also insane to think this is the only 1v1 duel in the entirety of the franchise where Yami Yugi never loses a single life point. Pretty crazy. Oh, shoot. Sorry about that. I didn't think anyone would make it to the end of the video. I want to say thank you so much for your support. Long live Yu-Gi-Oh! And I hope you have an amazing day. Take care, guys.